We'll now reconvene into the open session. The time is now 5:33 p.m. And the executive session has been concluded. The participants in the executive session were myself, Mayor Earl Bedez, and Mayor Pro Tem Eric Gotthof, Lynn Feiger, Gusty Kanakis, Tom Priest, Brian Rodine, and also our town attorney Mike Sawyer, as well as town attorney Rob Marsh. Yeah, thank you. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matter is not included in the motion to go into executive session occurred during executive session, or that any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of the open meetings laws, I would ask that you state your concerns for the record. Hearing none, we will move on to open session and pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First up, we've got the consent agenda with a amendment for item G that Jay has shared with everybody. Does anybody have any conflicts or questions on anything there?
I have a question, just like, so, I guess maybe this is for Mike. I have some general comments on some regarding these, the approvals for Minturn North, and then some not regarding those. Is that more something for council comments to bring up? Or if it involves some of those approvals in the consent agenda, should we talk about them now?
So, do you mean the site plan approvals for, this looks like there's 1, 2, 3 houses that are on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a comment specific to those, and then I have some other questions kind of not specific to those.
So generally what we would do is, the consent agenda is really, you don't have any comments, you don't want to discuss substantively the matters. You could ask to pull items C, D, and E from the consent agenda and put it on the regular agenda, at which point you could make comments. I mean, I guess if you have just kind of a general comment, generally applicable comment, you could do that during council comments.
Okay, I think that's probably more of the route I want to.
But if you're okay with the site plans generally as they exist, that they meet town code.
Yeah, it's a question about not a question, a comment about the substance in those packets. So I guess I'll just cover that in council comments.
Okay, very good. We've got Madison here to answer those questions.
With that, we'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amended item G on there that.
I'll make the motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendment, item G, the resolution 30.
Second.
All right. Motion by Gusty, second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving on to the approval of the regular agenda. Any changes or additions on there? Good. Take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda for a council meeting, June 19, 2024.
I'll second that.
Perfect. Motion by Tom, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving along. Any declaration or conflicts of interest tonight from the council? Seeing none, we will move on to public comment. Any citizens are invited to comment on any items on the consent agenda or not on the regular agenda. We've got 5 minutes. Anybody in the audience or on Zoom land?
No one in Zoom land.
Perfect. All right, we will close public comment and move on to council comments and committee reports.
I had a couple. I actually attended the DDA on June 10th. Thanks for hosting a nice event. I was encouraged by the volume of local businesses that showed up, and I know we have that on our agenda tonight to talk about it. And also, I attended a QQ meeting on June 13th, and one of the main topics was challenges for agricultural. And it's just not water that challenges them. I mean, hell is one of the big ones that they've been getting hit with this year, and it just totally destroys their crops. And the other main item was Northwest Cog has a 208 plan, and it was updated in 2012, and they're going to be doing a update probably within the next year on that plan. That's all I have.
Awesome, thank you.
Couple items actually for Minturn Fitness Center. So we're gonna shift funds over and start to support the Bindu Scholarship Race and expand the race series to a winter multi-event race and a summer one, as well as a snowboard competition over in Beloit as they expand the rails as we speak. And last but not least, starting next Sunday, but you'll get that information, tentatively offering Tai Chi.
Nice.
That's all I got.
I just want to acknowledge that today is Juneteenth Day, which celebrates the end of slavery in America. And even though Minturn does not officially celebrate it, I think we should recognize it.
Agreed. Thank you.
I wanted to thank the VBF and UMTA and everybody involved in the dual slalom and the jump jam. That was a super cool event, and it got covered on the front page of Pink Bike, which is like this big mountain biking website. It's one of the biggest ones out there, so it's kind of cool to see the spotlight on Minturn on that. And I guess so regarding the Minturn North things, just in general, I saw some of the design review submittals, and the letters and some of the stuff still use a lot of copy and paste language when it comes to how it fits in the Minturn vernacular and everything, and you can tell that like all of these approvals are being basically copy and pasted in terms of design and all of that, and I would just like it would be good to hear maybe from the people that are like, I'm super excited for the people who are moving this through and getting these houses built, and excited for them. I don't want to hold those up in any way, but it would be great to hear feedback from the developer or the people who are working towards building or purchasing homes there, that they are paying attention, that they're moving into Minturn, and the whole idea is to incorporate them into Minturn and not build a block of the exact same color and exact same look and exact same everything in a row. So I'd love to, maybe just like the developer to say like, yeah, we're trying, we're talking to them about different color trims, and we're talking about things, and trying to maybe show them some pictures from around Minturn, and just throwing it out there, or I don't know, like maybe they're just selling them and saying, hey, this is the colors you can get. So it'd be good to maybe have the developer address that. And then the other thing that there's a couple other things from over there. You can tell the bike and hike access is a little goofy while this is going on and people are cutting through and everything. And I think it's a great reason for the town again to look at a master trail access plan for over there that maybe doesn't involve parking. It could involve some sort of trail easement in the area to get people down to the road, the lower Minturn Road. And then also, I was wondering if you all had seen the HOA documents, because we talked a lot about that in the approval process, and then it's kind of been silenced from what I've seen. And I'm just wondering what the deal is with that, and what, are those been finalized? Have they been brought? Have they been? What are we looking at from an HOA over there?
So I can't speak to the HOA. I believe Mike was at the recording of all the documents, so maybe he can. Concerning the colors, I do want to let you know that every review letter that has gone to the applicant has included language from the council meeting that I believe you brought up, saying Minturn encourages, more eclectic use of color. However, obviously we don't regulate color, so I can't enforce that. And at the last planning commission hearing, where this first batch of DRB applications went to the planning commission, Rick, the applicant, was very straight up in saying that originally he was going to pick, 6 different colors for people to choose from, but everybody came in and started kind of modifying all of the base models that he had, and they got to the point where they were just like, okay, we'll do whatever color you want. And so the way it was represented is that these are the colors that the people who are buying the houses to build it are choosing, rather than just the developer.
Thanks.
Earl, did you have any, if you're on?
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Brian on that, because basically we're looking at a big color sink in the middle of the colorful houses around it. It's going to look kind of strange, I think, but legislatively, I don't know that we can do that. We don't have it in our code for sure, which I don't know. Mike, if we put that in the code, obviously that this has already gotten started, so it wouldn't maybe grandfathered in, but shouldn't we at least allow for in somewhere in our code that legally that we can enforce a more colorful solution than gray and black?
Mm,
I think Earl was asking.
no.
I mean, you could add some language to the design review criteria about color differences between homes. I mean, I'm sure there's language out there that we could incorporate. It gets to be a little challenging when whose taste in color is going to prevail, the homeowner or the planning and zoning commission.
I thought we kind of went through that too when they were in, and that's what we decided, was to leave it up to the homeowner who's actually buying the home to decide the color. They're the ones that's paying the mortgage on it.
Yeah, they just made representations that they were going to encourage things,
Yeah.
which is all we can ask for. I just wanted to make sure that was happening. So
Basically, the person
That's what it
forking
is.
out $2.54 million gets final say on that.
absolutely, yeah. But the best thing you can do is encourage it, and I just wanted to make sure they were following that. So that's good here. You never know. Yeah, maybe once they all get built and they're all brown and black in a row, someone will go, I want to go find my house.
And Brian, to your question about HOA docs, I'll check on that and get back to you the next meeting.
Thanks.
Excellent. Moving on to staff reports. Anything?
We don't have any staff reports.
Without Michelle here, I'm not sure we have anything, yeah.
Well, Michelle's staff report. Moving on after that, special presentations, which I don't believe we have any of those tonight. Awesome. And that leads us to business items. So starting with item A, resolution 16, series 2024.
All right, getting on to business. So council will recall that back in April, we had a notice public hearing about the adoption of a service plan for metropolitan districts associated with the Battle Mountain development. And a metropolitan district is a separate level of government from the town. They are designed to provide kind of specific services. They're frequently used out in unincorporated counties where the county doesn't do road maintenance or certain types of things that a municipality normally does. Within a municipality, metropolitan districts frequently are used as a vehicle to help finance public infrastructure. And what ends up happening is that a metropolitan district will construct certain infrastructure on behalf of the developer. And then the cost of that will be incorporated into bonds, which get sold on the public market. Those bonds, due to federal tax law, usually are lower in an interest rate than private financing. The reason being that they're usually exempt from federal tax, the revenue, the interest you get from the bonds. And as a result, the theory is that the owners of the development can actually benefit somewhat by having public infrastructure financed by a metropolitan district because they're paying a lower finance rate. Public infrastructure has to be paid in one way or the other. It's either paid by the developer and passed through in the lot cost, or it can be paid for by a metropolitan district and passed through as an additional tax increment. In this case, Battle Mountain is proposing 4 different metropolitan districts. One of those districts would be the debt holding or the debt issuing district. Its size would be probably 1 lot or 1 small area of the entire Battle Mountain property. And that district would then have contractual relationships with the other 3 districts that would commit to imposing a mill levy of a certain amount in order to repay the debt. These 3 additional districts, and we do have with us representing Battle Mountain Bill O'Kaley, who is one of the state's experts in metropolitan districts, and he'll be prepared to give a little presentation and answer some questions here shortly. But these other districts will perform unique tasks. I believe the understanding is there might be a district for a commercial area associated with the development. There might be, or there would be a district for the free market portion of the development, and then because there is a residential portion of the development that is subject to your housing guidelines, there would be a separate district for the affordable housing portion of the development. And that is important because the service plan as drafted contemplates that a tax increment of up to 50 mills could be assessed against the commercial and against the free market residential, whereas for the affordable housing portion of the development, that tax assessment would be limited to 35 mills. So the affordable housing would get something of a break from the tax levy. Included in the staff memo and materials, let's see, is that Jim Mann perhaps? It is, excellent. Hi, Jim. So Jim Mann is a financial consultant who we have, the town has worked with for a number of years on issues ranging from how to structure water rates to reviewing metropolitan district documents and financial plans. And Jim prepared a memo which we'll give him an opportunity to briefly go through here in a second. But within the context of what would a tax burden look like for the debt repayment portion of a mill levy, assuming an $850,000 affordable housing house at 35 mills, that would be, I think, just around $2,000, and assuming a free market house of just under $2 million, which probably at this point is undervalued, the tax assessment at 50 mills would be around $6,000 a year. So, you know, if you think about the tax assessments you as council persons receive on your individual properties, add somewhere between $2,000 and $6,000 to that, and think about what the impact is to persons who would be buying those houses. Lynn, do you have a question?
So why does the district only have one lot in it?
And I think in Bill's presentation, he can take a little note and talk about this, but the idea is that the district that holds the debt, it does have to own, or it does have to be represented by property within the subdivision, but it itself is not providing services to the rest of the community. It simply is issuing debt and repaying debt, so its geographic boundary is restricted to a small
So
area.
doesn't it affect what happens if there's a default?
So, and excellent. Let's talk about defaults because that is something that Bill and I have talked about, and that I know the council has been concerned about. So, it is generally not contemplated that the districts will own very much property, and I'm going to kind of back into what happens in the event of a default or a bankruptcy. There is within the service documents the possibility that the districts may own 3 parcels, the wetlands parcel, the CTP, which is where active environmental remediation is occurring, and the OTP. And the reason is that those districts may provide environmental services as part of their functions as a government entity to make sure that environmental remediation is happening and the proper reporting is going to the EPA, et cetera, et cetera. The districts might also own property within the subdivision, let's say landscaping strips. They might own roadways because other than the main streets, the roadways are going to be not owned by the town, but they will be, I think, owned and maintained likely by the Metropolitan District. They might own pocket parks. And I bring this up because the service plan, based on comments from the council, we have added language to the service plan that says that the districts cannot encumber any property that it owns with a mortgage or other type of lien. And the reason that that's important is that if there's not a lien or a mortgage on property owned by the district, bondholders, so the people who would finance the debt issued by the district, have a single source of recourse. And that recourse is to look to the tax mill levy that's allowed under the service plan. And in the event of a default, and this is a risk that people who invest in these types of properties that these types of bonds that they have to undertake, is that their ability to be repaid, if for some reason the financial taxing ability of the districts is inadequate to repay the full amount of the bonds, is limited to the mill levy cap, which is contained in the service plan. That's the 35 mills for affordable housing and 50 mills for regular housing, and the time period in which debt must be repaid. And in our service plan, that timeline is 30 years. So if you have a situation where there was a default on the bonds, the only thing that the bondholders can do is essentially ask perhaps to have a receiver make sure that the districts levy the full 50 mills or 35 mills against the property as it exists, and to collect that money and pay it over to the bondholders for whatever remaining portion of the 30 years is in place. The bondholders do not have a right to come after property owned by the district unless there was a separate lien placed against the property. And again, we have modified the service plan to prohibit the placement of liens on any property that might be owned by the district.
And there'll be no mill levy on the properties conveyed to Minturn in the future.
That's correct for a couple of reasons. One is, I would anticipate that we would seek exclusion from the Metropolitan District when the town take title to either the OTP or to the wetlands parcel, and we would do that after remediation of those two properties was completed.
What about in between?
We won't take title until remediation is done. So we won't have, and the other reason we won't have any liability is, as a government entity, we don't pay taxes.
Okay.
So, at the last hearing in April, there were some questions by members of the council specific to kind of the financial plan, the financial capacity of the district to repay the debt. We had some comments from Jim Mann, which had been responded to by Battle Mountain. Jim unfortunately had a conflict that evening. He wasn't able to be present. We wanted then to take the comments that we had heard from council and try and work constructively with Battle Mountain to find ways to provide additional information, as well as to find constructive solutions to the concerns that had been expressed. I think when Bill has his opportunity to talk, he will discuss that the Battle Mountain did go out and obtain more information in the forms of information from their engineers about the infrastructure planning and cost estimates, and from a accounting firm that manages metropolitan districts, particularly here in Eagle County and on the West Slope, as to what the cost would be to manage the districts going forward, to make sure that there was enough mill levy capacity to do that. And I guess I would, in that regard, state that the service plan does contemplate that the districts can levy up to 20 mills additional tax burden for operations purposes. And operations might be everything from having the accountant and a lawyer and maybe a part-time staff person to kind of run the operations, but could extend to repaving roads, maintaining landscaping and parks, and undertaking environmental compliance work on parcels that still have requirements going back to the EPA. So there are some operating costs that are foreseen in the future. It appears that with a 20 mil operational possibility, there is more than sufficient money to run the districts. And that, of course, a district is not obliged to levy all 20 mills. And I think perhaps Bill can chime in on this as well, that, you know, the tax revenue received by the entity should be limited to what's needed to reasonably run the district. And it should also be noted that they cannot use any portion of the 20 mil operational mill levy to pay additional debt. That has to be used for operational purposes. So with that, Jim Mann has had an opportunity to review the additional information provided by Battle Mountain. I think has some thoughts on the financial viability of the plan, you know, things that he thinks the council should pay attention to as part of its decision-making process, and I would turn the time over to Jim for his comments.
Thanks, Mike. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I guess, you know, I think they've, you know, done a fair amount of work in catching up with some of the issues that I raised in some of my review of the proposal. I think there's still a couple of items that are generally outstanding in terms of what reality is in today's market versus where it is, you know, a few years ago. We're in a very different interest rate market than we were back in 2021, which in the response that was provided, all the debt issuance examples, if I remember correctly, were all from 2021. And I think everybody understands that interest rates have gone up significantly from that point. Will they come back down in the future? I think that's a question to be seen. Right now, I think if you look at market conditions, you would likely be in a position where you could point to the market probably pricing in a 0.5 point cut yet in 2024. That is really going to be dependent upon the next several months worth of data that may result in a first rate cut perhaps in September with a second one later this year. That still really does not bring you down to the levels that we were in 2021. So, if I were to venture a guess in terms of where interest rates would be if they were issuing debt today, and again, I'm not predicating my comments that they're issuing debt today, but they would be in an interest rate environment that would probably be in the 6 to 7 or 7.5% range, even with that 0.5 point cut. So it's a very different financing market than what is shown in the plan, which always causes me some pause when I look at plans like this. Because I think the last thing that we want to have happen is a situation where they're back in front of you again asking for additional authority. We want to try to button this up as much as possible in the first go around. I still question, and I know there's been a little bit back and forth in terms of some of the housing mix and how that would work in terms of the affordability piece, how many mills would be levied on those properties, what the actual cost would be. I raise questions on whether those would actually be affordable units or not in the marketplace. I'm not answering that question one way or the other. And then kind of on a global perspective, there's a lot of, hey, we're going to do this and it's going to look, we're going to do this many houses and we're going to do et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there's not a lot backing up the plan. And so you're taking a lot of faith at this point that the assertions that you have to make under statute that there's the sufficient and existing and projected need I think that's a yes. The existing services in the area to be served by the proposed district are inadequate. That's a definite yes. The proposed district is capable of providing economical and sufficient service to the area within the proposed boundaries. I would argue that that's a bit of a question mark right now. You can take it on faith or you can choose to delve into that further. And then the final one is the area to be included in the proposed district has the financial ability to discharge the debt. Again, there's a question on that. I think you probably can take that on faith if that's the decision of the town council. But I would point out that statute is very specific that if you're not comfortable making those assertions and approving and going forward, whether it's on a conditional basis or just saying, yes, we'll allow you to create the district, go forth and do, there is the ability for the town, if you're not comfortable in making those assertions, to ask for more information and to get the answers to those questions. And, to White Bear Ankley's, statements that there are many districts that have been approved on this amount of information or less. That is true throughout the state. I'm looking at it from Mintern's perspective and the perspective of, how you might want to look at it. But that by no means is saying that you have to do it one way or the other. I can point to any number of metro districts that have been done on a wing and a prayer in terms of the amount of information that have been successful. I can point to metropolitan districts that have been approved with a much more comprehensive group of information that haven't been successful. It's going to be market conditions and it's going to be what ultimately happens in this district. So there, it's not simple to say that, with the lack of information or the limit, I shouldn't say lack, but the limited information that you have, that this is not going to be a successful district. my point is that you just want to go into this with open eyes. I think they've generally answered some of my my questions concerning how they're going to operate the district on the mill levy that they're proposing and whether they're going to be able to do it. That's one of my largest concerns in looking at districts, is that the operations tend to be much more burdensome than most plans ever contemplate. I think, they've come back and given us some information. There is a certain amount of question that I have in terms of, those operational numbers, but at some point you take on faith what your proponent is giving you, that they're going to be able to do what they're saying they're going to do. But I always suggest that you want to do that with a cautious eye. And I'm happy to go into a lot more detail if you really want me to, but I was just kind of hitting some of the high points.
Thanks, James.
Jim, maybe you can comment, you brought up interest rates. How does interest rates intersect with assessed value and the ability to borrow money? It seems to me there's kind of a triangle there.
Yeah, so the interest rate doesn't necessarily, the assessed value or the projected value is going to drive how much money you're going to be able to issue debt on. So if you have $200 million worth of value, you're going to have X number of dollars that the revenue stream will support and pay back at a certain interest rate. If that interest rate goes up by 200 basis points, your amount of money that you can borrow is going to be reduced by a factor, simply because the mill levy on that same $200 million is going to produce the same dollars. It's just that much more of it is going to have to go to interest as opposed to principal. So in this case, I think we're looking at roughly $53 million of borrowing authority. If the interest rate is significantly higher, that borrowing authority may drop, because when you factor in capitalized interest and the actual cost of interest, the amount of money that you're going to be able to support with that revenue stream off of $200 million worth of value is going to be less. So that's the triangle that Mike's talking about. Now, we could be in the exact opposite situation where interest rates drop significantly, or the value increases much more greatly. You'll be in a position where potentially you could have borrowed more. So it's a two-way street, but when we're setting the plan, we have to kind of have a pretty good guess of where we are today to make, the assumptions going forward as to what that borrowing authority is going to be. And right now, that borrowing authority and the amount of dollars they're saying they're going to spend on infrastructure, is $53 million, but that's based on interest rates from 2021. It's not based on what we're seeing today. And so that's a cautionary comment. And, money's fungible. So it goes up and goes down. And if they have to use more for interest, they're going to use less for infrastructure. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that the project's still going to get built. And if the developer can't get as much back out of the Metropolitan District financing mechanism, they're going to have to backfill that with their own money. And how do they then, get that money back? Every project itself has to pencil out. There's a certain amount of equity return that any investor and or the developer proponent is going to be looking for. And if it falls below a certain threshold, they're going to choose not to do the project. And that's the part where you just want to be a little cautious in terms of how you're looking at the development of a plan.
Earl, you got your hand up there.
Yes, Jim, I'm curious. It seemed like most of the responses to your questions were saying, wait, we need to get into the subdivision process first before we'll actually have the proper estimates. But I'm a little confused about how this works as far as at what point, if we were to approve the metro districts at this phase with what we have, does that set the debt at that point, or does this play out as they move forward with their processes?
If you approve the service plan, the Metro District service plan as it's written, it sets the maximum debt levy. Now, the proponent can always come back to you and ask for a different debt levy. They would have to prove some certain things out, but they can always come back to you and ask for an amendment, and they just have to go through that process again. Once you create the body politic, which is the Metropolitan District, it's created. And the risk is that it's like, well, you know, if you don't approve this, then we're not moving forward with the project. So it becomes it becomes a situation where they're holding you over a barrel to a certain extent, because all of a sudden, hey, if we can't do this, then we're going to walk away from the project. That's the risk. And that's why that's why I always suggest, and it's my opinion. And again, I cannot emphasize enough. It's my opinion. And if you choose to accept it, that's your prerogative. If you choose to go in a different direction, that's your prerogative as well. I try to have as much buttoned up as I possibly can, so that you don't run into that situation where you're feeling like you're backed into a corner and having to amend a service plan.
What I don't understand is, let's say the developer is unrealistic and interest rates don't go down and the project can't be done. Why is that such a big risk to the town? What's so wrong about that? I mean, I don't know that the town is counting on it for anything.
There isn't a necessary financial risk to the town other than you've got a continued fallow piece of property. That's the risk to the town, that if the town is looking for the development, if the development doesn't happen, there's an impact. But there's no other financial risk towards the town. The risk really does fall back to the proponent or the developer, in that they're sitting on a piece of property that they spent money on and they're not able to develop it. Now, can they do it in the future? Yes. They can hold that property and wait until market conditions put them in a position where they can move forward. And again, there's a couple buckets of money that go into a metropolitan district. There's the Metropolitan District financing tool, which is at this point, we'll just keep using the number, $53 million worth of debt issued to do 40 some million dollars worth of projects. If the total project cost is, let's just say $100 million, if the Metropolitan District financing tool is covering $43 million of that project, that means the developer is putting in $57 million. If interest rates are such where the money that they can pull back out of the Metro District financing tool drops to $40 million, then the developer's got to come up with that other $3 million, apples being, apples to apples. And at some point, if that disparity becomes great enough, the developer might be in a position to say, we're not making enough money on the project, we're going to walk away, or we're not going to do it right now. That's the risk. There isn't a general financial risk that falls directly back to the town.
I mean, I agree with Lynn. That seems like upside instead of risk.
Yeah.
So,
What
is
about
there
if they,
anything else? Is there any other, can that, if that goes and they don't do it, can that impact like our taking over our property once it's, if the settlement gets executed?
No,
It can't affect that. It can't.
the district does not have the ability to pledge property that can be taken away by bondholders that aren't getting paid.
There's no infrastructure that we're depending on as part of this that would allow access for future.
The only item of shared infrastructure really is a reroute of Malloy Park Road, and they're going to have to work on that with the school district as that those two development proposals move forward.
So if they go in and start putting in their horizontal infrastructure, and then they decide this isn't working and we've got a whole bunch of holes in the ground, how would that pan out? I'm not sure. You know, we already went through that with another developer who dug everything up and then sued us, and so I just don't want to. I know it's a different. I'm not worried about Battle Mountain suing us, but I don't want to end up with a bunch of dug up ground either.
They're really separate issues, Mayor. The bonds will be issued to pay for infrastructure, to pay the contractors. As part of a subdivision or development process, we would have an agreement with the developer where they would have to post security to the town.
Yeah, you're right.
For all the public improvements, and if they didn't complete them, we would call the bond and do the work ourselves. So they're separate.
Yeah, gotcha.
So if council doesn't have any more questions for staff, and certainly we're not trying to cut off discussion, but we turn the time over to the applicant and get some comments from him.
And this isn't a repeat of the previous presentation, rather a follow-up, correct?
I'm sorry?
This is not a repeat of the explanation of the districts, rather a follow-up to everything we just discussed.
Well, we do have a PowerPoint. First of all, Bill Ankley, White Bear Ankley, Tanaka, and Waldron. We do have a PowerPoint that was shown to you from the last time, but we've added some things to it. We can skim, through that so that we don't go over old ground, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Just a couple of remarks before we get into the PowerPoint. As Jim indicated, and as we have seen, there are lots of districts that have this type of information, this level of information, assumptions like you see in this plan that have been approved and are in use throughout the state. We wouldn't come to you with a plan that wasn't in the mainstream with respect to other service plans that we have put together, and there have been hundreds. And so service plans are always based on assumptions because they come early in the development process before you have a clear understanding of what exactly is going to be built for the project. And it's necessary because the developer needs to understand what the capital stack is. The developer needs to understand that there's a financial resource available to help support the project through the metro districts. And that necessarily needs to be lined up front. And so we're always in a situation where we get the best available information based on the geography, the history of the project, and some other factors which have been used in this case to design as best we can today what we think will go into the project when it actually gets built. And remember that districts cannot build anything without you approving the final design for the construction of public improvements. So we can't just go out and start financing whatever we feel like. You're going to have an opportunity to approve the project and the specific development of public infrastructure for the project during the subdivision approval process. So you always control what happens at the back end here. All we're doing up front is creating a resource. We're creating a financial resource that is available to support the project, whatever you approve for the project. So the goal here is to establish a mousetrap, basically a financial mousetrap, where we build limitations on what the financial powers of the metro districts can be. So we have a mill levy cap. We have an operations mill levy cap. We have a maximum debt cap. We have maximum term of bonds. That creates a sandbox, a set of parameters that is self-adjusting. We talk about interest rates. They will be different. They will certainly be different from whatever we show you right now. One thing we know for sure is it'll be different in the future. whatever we show in the financing plan is our best understanding of what the financial capability of the project will be. So it's important to understand that we're building parameters within which the districts have to operate. They can't go outside the sandbox. And if they do, then you have enforcement powers, both in terms of the statute and in terms of the intergovernmental agreement that's part of the service plan here that gives you rights to call the district to the table to the extent that we're acting outside of that sandbox. So I just wanted to make sort of the general, set the table for the service plan. You know, when you look at the statute, one more point on this. When you look at the statute, the legislature created these entities to be flexible. They created entities that exist for a long period of time that are going to be faced with different circumstances over that time. And so when it comes to putting information into a service plan for you to consider, the Special District Act, which is the act that governs formation of districts, only requires, quote unquote, a general description of the proposed public infrastructure. Doesn't require, doesn't call for detailed plans for public infrastructure. It's a general description of the proposed infrastructure and a preliminary engineering survey and a general description of the estimated costs of providing the district services. It's all in the context of understanding that these are living, breathing entities that exist over a long period of time, and the circumstances will change over time. So it's really, really, really important that we have these boundaries, these parameters. That's what all other jurisdictions in the state lock in on. And you can look at this service plan in comparison to dozens and dozens and dozens of other service plans out there. And you're going to see these same parameters built into those service plans because those other jurisdictions are in the same seat that you are, trying to assure that we empower the project to develop, but we don't create a financial risk for the town or the taxpayers. And that's what these parameters do. I neglected to identify that we have some people on the Zoom, I believe. Tim McGuire is on the Zoom, and Trish Harris, who I think you've met before. There's Trish. And Lacey Knowles from D.A. Davidson, who can answer any questions concerning the financing plan. There's Lacey. D.A. Davidson is one of the premier underwriting firms in the state. They provide financial advisory services to metro districts throughout the state. They've got decades and decades of experience in that field. So, Trish, I think you're going to share your screen so we can run through the PowerPoint.
You able to see that?
Yep.
Okay, we can see it.
Okay.
All right, you want to go to the next slide? Trish? Okay. Just a snapshot of where we've been. We started this process back in December of 2023. February, we submitted an initial draft service plan. March, we did a presentation to town council. Between March 13th and April 7th, we massaged the service plan based on comments that were being received. April 10th, we got some input from Jim. Next slide. And then we go on April 15th, April 17th, April 18th, all the way through to today. You can go to the next slide. We don't need to read every line. And so here we are, June 19th, about 6 or 7 months into the process. I did want to point out that the train is leaving the station here because after the service plan goes through your review, if it's approved, we have to go to an election in November. And there are election deadlines that are starting to hit right now. Now we can go along a little bit and handle some of these election deadlines while we finish the process, but it's going to get awkward fairly quickly. So I just want to point that out. Next slide. So we got some input and we made some changes. We engaged an independent engineer to provide conceptual infrastructure plans for roads, water, sewer, and drainage. There are now new maps in the service plan where there were none before. There was just a listing of costs. That engineer has a long history with this project and is quite familiar with the topography and the general needs based on the number of units and type of development that's being proposed here. There's an engineer report now in the service plan where that independent engineer describes the basis for the costs and opines that they, in his opinion, are reasonable for the proposed infrastructure that is included in the service plan. So we've gotten external validation of the information that was initially provided. We also engaged an expert in special district accounting and district management. Marchetti and Weaver is a firm that has decades of experience in the metro district space in the mountains here. And we asked them to provide a pro forma operating budget based on the assumptions that we are making about metro district owned assets, primarily roads, road maintenance, maybe some trail maintenance. And so now in the service plan, there is an operating budget, roughly $97,000, that estimates what the future operating costs will be. With regard to operating costs, those are determined based on the needs of the district. We can't make up operating costs. The costs will be what they are, and we can only budget for those costs that are actually needed for the project. So there's controls built in. You operate by the same rules in terms of your operating budget. So our 20 mils, which was the cap on the operating levy, produces enough money to handle any reasonable operating expense that we might incur. But we did get expert input on that. The districts may not issue bonds with a foreclosable lien. Mike, we had talked about parcels 3 and 12 in regard to that. And so those are protected.
That's the OTP and the wetlands parcel.
And we also cannot include parcels 3 or 12 without the town consent, because you have options on those. And then none of the town parcels can be included within the boundaries of the districts. So those were some of the major changes that we were involved in the last 60 days or so in responding to comments. Next slide, Trish. I'm going to swing through this fairly quickly. We have 4 districts. We have an affordable housing district with a lower mill levy. We've talked about that. Again, we will operate the internal streets, open space, restricted parcels, community parks and trails. Next slide. We have a lot of limitations in the service plan. And I'm not going to go through every individual line item here. We talked about the fact that no town-owned property can be included in district boundaries. We have our standard suite of public infrastructure powers that we'll need to exercise our development plan. No covenant enforcement for the metro districts, only covenant enforcement on the restricted parcels. And again, all public improvements are subject to the town's subdivision process. You're going to get a chance to see this project again and approve the exact infrastructure that's required.
I would just note the covenant enforcement on restricted parcels. The EPA has covenants on the restricted parcels as to environmental compliance. So it's not HOA covenants, it's EPA covenants.
Thank you. I talked about this before. Debt cap, mill levy cap, maximum term of bonds, 30 years, no foreclosure. Any debt that's issued to the developer, this is important because often the developer will come out of pocket for some initial costs until the district has enough maturity to go to the market itself. And frequently, though, there will be a debt instrument issued to the developer to pay the developer back. In that case, we have to get an external financial advisor certificate declaring, and this is by state statute now, declaring the reasonableness of the terms, basically. So there's a control there that didn't exist prior to this year, but the legislature took that up last year. No condemnation power without town approval, and we have an IGA that gives you enforcement rights by contract, as well as your statutory rights to enjoin activities of the district that are outside of its powers. Next slide. So, question was asked about the size of the districts. The way we do this, we create small parcels where the districts will exist. They're going to be in this area here, so they can exist, and we will expand the boundaries of the districts over time within the area that is showing here is the inclusion area, based on the actual pace of development. So it's basically they're parked for the time being until we get greater clarity on when the development or where the development is actually occurring. No town parcels as well. The next few slides, these are the maps that we had our engineer put together, showing conceptual water. I'm not gonna make you read those tiny words, I can't read them myself. Conceptual sewer, conceptual street, and drainage. So this is all new information from what was in the original service plan, based on our engineer's input. Next slide. I've really gone over this. You know, we've gotten a lot of data that has been now put into the service plan with our engineer's report. Anytime, you know, we talk about improvements or interest rate changes and what that does to the amount of bonds that can be issued, the developer is always responsible for building the project. And to the extent the metro districts, because of a higher interest rate market or other factors, can't issue as much debt as we would like, it's always the developer's obligation to foot the bill. And that's just the nature of the beast. Next slide. Actually, Trish, that doesn't match mine, but that's okay. This was in the slide from April, the nature, the general public improvements that have been considered for this project. And again, all subject to the town's future approval. We have our restricted parcel oversight. Just basically, the districts would have the ability to manage the restricted parcels with regard to any covenant enforcement, EPA requirements, and the like. And then last but not least, we adjusted the estimated cost from after our review with our engineer. And so those are coming in at about 51 million now. The debt cap mentioned 62 million. We have our property tax caps in here, 50 mils for debt, except for the affordable housing unit or affordable housing areas, and that's 35. We have a 20 mil cap on operations, 30-year maximum maturity of bonds. We do have the ability to impose fees for services that are actually provided. And then we have our two series of bonds that are projected here. The first one projected in, says 2026, but it'll depend on the pace of the project and the dynamics on the ground. But that in the financing plan is roughly 36 million in 2026. And then in 2036, we show an additional funding amount of 24 million and a refinancing of the first issue from 2026. And that is common. Usually your interest rates and early stage financing are going to be a little higher than they can be later, especially if you can get a rating on the bonds later on. So we always program in a refinance of the initial tranche of bonds to lower the interest cost and lower the taxes associated with that debt. Hope I didn't go too fast. I didn't want to take you through everything all over again, but it's important, so happy to answer questions.
I'm good.
I'm good too.
There's nothing that would discourage downsizing if the project, if the, say you needed to downsize and make it half the size that the numbers are. There's nothing in this setup that would
Prevent that.
prevent that.
No, as I said early on, it's self-regulating. We have our parameters, and we plug in whatever the assessed value is to those parameters, and it spits out how much you can afford to issue in terms of debt. So if the project gets downsized, it just automatically downsizes.
Do we want to do any public comment on this one?
This is a public hearing, Mr. Mayor, so yes, we'll take public comment.
All right, let's do that next. Anyone from the audience like to ask any questions or speak?
There's nobody online with their hand up.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, you can close the public hearing.
I will close the public hearing at this time.
Are there any other questions for staff that council has? Okay. I would note that the decisional standard for approving a creation of a metropolitan district within a municipality is pretty discretionary. It's what you believe the best interest is of the town and its current and future citizens. I would also note that the at least ability to apply for metropolitan districts was part of the settlement agreement that we have with Battle Mountain. And that I would suspect that an approval of some form is material to them. But if you have questions about that, we do have representatives of Battle Mountain on the Zoom, and you could ask them about that. Otherwise, I think we've, over the course of a few months, tried to obtain your input or take your input and make the service plan a better document, more protective of both the town and future residents. And we submit this to you for your decision.
I'd rather make a motion. Unless anybody has further discussion.
Oh, Earl, you got your hand up.
I was just gonna make an observation. It seems to me that the risk is on the applicant and not so much the town. It seems to me we've been trying to protect them from themselves instead of us worrying about ourselves. So I think this is a project that we need to go ahead and let them move forward with. That's just my observation.
Thank you, Earl. Go ahead.
So with that, I make a motion to approve resolution number 16, series 2024. Resolution of the Town Council, Town of Minturn, Colorado, approving consolidated service plan for Battle North Metropolitan Districts, numbers 1 through 4.
I'll second that.
All right, we got a motion by Tom, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Resolution 16 passes. All right, on to item number B, acceptance of the 2023 fiscal year audit. Jay, I believe this is yours.
That is, and I also have with us Mr. Joe Hood, who is our auditor from Glenwood Springs. In February, we had an audit. I do want to caution everybody, this is not an issue that we legally, we're in trouble with an audit. We're legally required to have one by state statute. It's not something new. I always like to warn everybody that or set your minds at ease if I can. Joe, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you and we can go through this. I did put the management letter that you sent in front of them so that if you refer to that, they've got it in front of them. I would note that is somewhat proprietary for the council to see how the town is financially sound. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jay. Hello, council. Good evening. Once again, my name is Joe Hood, CPA, financial statement auditor from the Glenwood Springs area, and I was engaged to prepare your guys' December 31st, 2023 financial statement audit. Maybe I'll just share my screen really quick, Jay.
Yep, you should be able to.
Okay, I'll probably just pull up the report here. Let's see. So. Does everybody see the report there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. Let me close that. There we go. Now we've got the audit report up, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody should have a copy of this. So this is the audit report. So really quick, just want to thank Jay and Michelle and the staff and everybody for their assistance during the audit. I feel like it went smooth. We kind of had the draft to Jay last month and kind of fit my schedule to actually present it this month instead of last month. So thank you, Jay, for that. So we've gone ahead and we've issued an unmodified audit opinion. That basically means the report is clean. Your guys' financial statements are fairly presented and the public can rely on them. Didn't find any issues with internal controls or your procedures or anything to clean up there. Overall, I feel like the town is operating efficiently and effectively. You guys have, for the size of you're very small, but you have sound controls for the size of your staff. During the audit, I like to go over a few financial highlights, and this can be found in the management's discussion and analysis section of the report. So financial highlights, just kind of an overview of the town's progress during the year. Overall, your guys' net position increased about $600,000 or 3.8%. So that means you had positive inflows or positive income for the year. Overall, your guys' enterprise fund income exceeded expenses by $145,000. So it was also positive in your water, sewer, and trash fund as well. One of the things I like to do during the audit is to kind of skip back, or we start with not really the government-wide financials, but I like to go to the fund financial statements, which are found on pages, I believe, 14 and 15, which I'll skip over there. So fund financial statements, these are basically each one of your little operations in your town. So you have the general fund, the Battle Mount Resort, special revenue fund, which is strictly just rents received from your guys' building there. And then the non-major government funds, which are all summed up together, the Minturn Market, your Conservation Trust Fund, and a couple other really small funds. So overall, we could see on the next page how your fund balance increased. Fund balance is what you guys operate with. So that you basically, at the start of the year, you guys had $2.7 million in your general fund. You ended with 3.17. This amount is the amount that you carry over into 24 that you operate with. So you add your current revenues, you take your expected expenditures, and that's what you end up with your ending fund balance for 24. Within this is restrictions on any kind of board designated, such as the Tabor Reserve, or if you guys have any other kind of restrictions, which you don't. So each one of these columns shows where you've ended up in each fund and what you have to operate with going into 2024. Lastly, financials, I like to go to the very end of the report and go into the budget comparisons. Budget comparisons, I feel like, are the most useful part of the audit report for you as management. Basically, it shows what your major sources are, revenue sources are, what your major expenditures are, and then kind of gives you this is what you originally expected in your original budget. This is what you maybe amended your budget to be, and this is what actually happened. So then you have positive and negative variances, you know, throughout each category. So overall, you can see your total revenues, you were positive 53,000 from where you expected to be. And each fund has a budgetary schedule in there. So this is the general fund that we're looking at right now. So overall, for expenditures, you expected to expend 2.8, you spent 2.4, so you're $420,000 positive on there. So overall, I think you guys, your management, your town finance committee is being fiscally responsible with the town's money based on what you guys presented as a budget. So I have no concerns there. I'm gonna really quick stop my share. Let me see how I do that. I'm sorry about that, guys. Jay, is there any way to stop my share on your side? There we go. Thank you very much. Now everybody can see me?
Yes, sir.
So really quick, I'd just like to ask you as the board, are there any questions regarding the financial statements? Or did anything arise during your review of the report that you had questions on?
Good year.
Yes, Earl?
Yes, I just want to confirm that with all the through your audit process, did you have any concerns at all with what you were seeing?
No, sir. I did not have any concerns with what we saw. No, we you know, we test the controls. We basically assess risk. We then create audit programs to test controls, review, and then we take your guys' source document and make sure that what you say you're doing it through a set of various tests and procedures. And no, I didn't see anything. You know, I feel like everything is fairly stated. No concerns whatsoever.
All right, so Jay's keeping up his standards then. That's important.
Thank you.
No, I feel like he is keeping up with the standards. Yes.
If nobody has any questions, again, this is required by state statute that you accept the audit. I will note that an audit is a snapshot of a year that happened 6 months ago on December 31st. It ended. And we had the audit completed in February. President's Week is usually when you guys come in. And we've gotten it all put together to this document. Tonight, I would request that you accept it. That will give me the authority to send it off to DOLA and our various bondholders, things like that. It'll also give us the opportunity to put it on the website without the draft word in the middle of it.
I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to accept the 2023 fiscal audit. And I'd also like to thank Jay for keeping us in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we got a motion by Gusty, second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Well, I know it's short and sweet, but thank you very much for your time. And I know you guys got a long agenda, so have a good evening and thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I will also state that if you guys have any questions on this, you know, when you read I know that you're dying to read the entire thing if you haven't already. But if a question comes up, feel free to ask it. If I don't know the answer, I will get it for you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. All right, moving on to number C, I guess, ordinance or business item number C, ordinance 13, series 2024. This one's got Madison's name on it.
It is. So this is second reading of ordinance 13. This passed on first reading with no requested changes. So that is before you today as it was passed at the last meeting.
Sounds good. Public hearing. Yeah, definitely. And Earl, any questions on your side?
Nope.
Perfect. All right, on that case, I will open up for public comment. We have one.
There's nobody in the audience with their hand up and the Zoom audience.
Lynn Teach, 253 Pine Street. I have just two things. My one concern is going from 1 year to 5 years without any real experience that we've had with this whole thing. Seems like a big jump. I was wondering if you'd consider a more moderate, like 3 years, something in the middle to see how it works. The other thing is, I feel in all fairness, the current owner of any building 75 years or older that meets the criteria should be able to nominate their own home at any time. And I don't know the answer to that, so that was another thing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else from the public in the room want to comment or questions? All right. Seeing none.
Can you not nominate your own property? Or we close, sorry, close it, yeah.
Yes, you can, yeah.
In order, mister.
He wasn't hitting it very hard last time. Gonna hit it. Is it just suggest like, can you not?
So yes, as the current chapter 19 stands, you obviously can nominate your own property, and as long as you have some kind of stake in this town, you can nominate pretty much anybody's property. This ordinance is specifically hoping to address the non-property owners nominating, other people's property. So while this ordinance doesn't specifically say, okay, you're good for 5 years unless you want to nominate your own property, which I can certainly amend it to say something like that. It is the intent of this ordinance to provide the property owner with the certainty that somebody else can't nominate their property for 5 years.
All right. Any other follow-up from council, or you can make a motion?
Make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 13, series 2024, ordinance of the town of Minturn, Colorado, amending chapter 19 of the Minturn Municipal Code.
Earl second.
All right. We'll go motion by Tom, second by Earl. We'll do roll call for this.
Bestie, aye.
Tom, aye.
Lynn, aye.
Ryan, I.
Eric, aye.
Earl, aye.
Perfect. Motion passes. All right. Let's see, on to the next one. We've got D, ordinance 14, series 2024, second reading, Belden Place. You like this one?
Okay. So, items D, E, F, and G all pertain to the same development. Belden Place, as the council will remember, Belden Place was on agendas for the town council back in 2022. The town heard requests to approve a PUD, to approve a final plat, and to adopt a subdivision improvement agreement at that time. Litigation ensued, actually before those approvals were made, specifically around the issue that there was not sufficient water available in the town's water system to service all of the development that was the subject of the plat. We were able to reach a settlement agreement that was adopted by council last fall. And as part of that settlement agreement, the applicant had the opportunity to request amendments to 3 documents. Again, the PUD plan, that's the zoning document, the plat, and the subdivision improvement agreement. We'll talk separately about the subdivision improvement agreement in a minute. or when we get down to that item. As to the amendments to the PUD plan and to the plat, essentially what is happening is that the developer is consolidating a triplex lot into a single-family lot with the right to have an ADU. Yes, Tom?
This is second reading, so, I mean, we're familiar with all that, unless I'm misspeaking. So.
How about I
Cut to the
sum up,
chase. Yes,
and
please.
if council has questions, we can answer them. Thank you, Tom. So we're second reading of these two ordinances. I would note 2 items have been identified between first and second reading. The first one relates to the application of the recently modified AMI levels for affordable housing. So at the time that the subdivision was first considered by the council, it was 200% AMI. Council recently reduced that number to 120% of AMI. And while we have not changed the language in the PUD, it is, the council is certainly able to have questioning of the applicant. The applicant has a representative here, Brian Belden, or Brian Bevan, sorry.
And name the project.
Yeah, right. About that, and potentially to condition the second reading of the PUD approval with that condition. The other item, which I think we've resolved, involved the plat had identifies some encroachment areas. And the idea is that eaves or portions of a second story can extend over certain utility easements that the plat has created, and there's these little encroachment areas shown on that. The town engineer requested that we identify that those second story features have to be at least 8 feet above the easement in case we needed to go in and deal with a utility, and that language has been added to the plat at this point. So I think that item is taken care of. So ordinance 14 relates to the PUD plan. Again, question about affordable housing AMI. Happy to answer any questions from the council. If not, we can invite Belden's representative up.
Well, I think where we left it off was said representative, not with the last name Belden, went back to his client to have that discussion. So unless we got questions, curious where you're at on that.
Yeah, I would agree. Sure. Thanks. So yeah, Brian Bevan on behalf of the applicant. So my client does not want to drop it from 200 to 120. And the reason is kind of twofold. One is, I think generally as we've kind of gone through this process, the grandfathered in, if you will, as Earl talked about it earlier, is it's usually been kind of when the application was made, and this was made back in December when none of that discussion was even on the horizon at that point, when we were doing the settlement agreement, and when the application was made. So that's kind of point one. And point two, which may be more practically important, is that I don't think if you drop it to 120 in this situation, it's going to accomplish what you guys are trying to do. And the reason being is because the units that are affected, they already have reservation holders for all 4 units, and that's at that 200%. So if you drop it to 120 and you're trying to find that, I'll call it a quote unquote 120% buyer, it's not going to happen because the 200% buyer is already locked in. So that was the reason in the discussion I had with my client. If you have questions for me, happy to try to answer them.
Well, I remember when this first came, actually planning and zoning. So at that point in time, the developer's entire acquisition plan was predicated around this number, 200. That was the town number at the time. So obviously some litigation has occurred since that time, but essentially no change in the plan with this parallel discussion happening that occurred with the developer as well, correct?
Correct. And I mean, this, like Scott Hunt had talked about it, the application we made in December was really pretty minor, and Mike and I had discussions if it was even gonna go through kind of an administrative process, and it didn't, and I think that's obviously fine. But yeah, the simple amendment was just to take the triplex and turn it into a single family with an ADU. That was really based on the SFEs that were available, and so that was really the simplicity of the event.
So the four that have it locked in right now, do they meet any of the other desired parameters in regards to local deed restriction or anything else associated with those properties, other than this AMI?
Whatever those other, those three levels of, there's kind of level 1, level 2, level 3 of those restrictions, and whatever those four are, that's, whatever the requirements for those four are met with the reservation holders.
Do you remember what they are, Mike or Madison?
What the reservations are?
Those 4 units that there was discussion back and forth in regards to various restrictions associated with those properties, and we applied an AMI to it. Specifically, primary residents, locals only, certain demographics.
Yes, I guess I can answer that a little bit better. And looking at the chart in the actual PUD guide, Tom, is you've got that level 1, level 2, level 3 restrictions on that level 2, 200%. So yes for 7A, yes for resident occupied permanent restriction. Same on the second one, same on the third one, same on the fourth one.
What's the cheapest building unit you have for sale?
I don't know. I don't have that information. I really don't.
I think that's the issue in terms of the AMI.
It sounds like they're already
But it-
sold.
you're saying
Well,
everything
I
you've
can't
got
say
is-
they're already, I can't say they're already sold. They're
Right, yeah.
reserved, right?
Well, the basis for this actually was brought up by Eagle County Housing in regards to our AMI calculation that they highlighted was flawed. And it was built around, granted, it's been how many years now since the start of this, but that meant the cheapest house at that point in time, before the train wreck of interest rates, was somewhere in the high 6s, mid 7s, but that has certainly changed.
And I guess I would note that, you know, the developer will have to comply with the process review of, what is it? Eco housing, or, is it the home store? Is that Eagle County Home Store? Yeah. As part of reviewing compliance with whatever the affordable housing requirements that are imposed on the PUD, there will be a review process associated with that.
It is kind of nice that they have 20 out of all of them deed restricted to resident occupied, which is like a model that if every potential development came in with that number, we'd be in a lot better place. You know, there'd be a lot more rentals available and everything.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is this development, again, due to the legal delays, came in with a set model. I don't know that that's changed other than the second option, which is the SFE restriction. So, you know, other than demanding to go back to the drawing board, which I don't know that that's what you want to do, the 120% is a target we're trying to use as a policy that I guess the discussion is whether we're going back to grandfather or invoking it since this hasn't necessarily been formally approved because everything came on hold.
It does seem that in this case it wouldn't make any difference, is kind of what they're pointing out. Like,
Well, you could argue we're moving the goalpost.
for the 4 people who have, so they'd be stoked. There'd be 4 people who have money down in this project that would be extremely excited for us.
Well, I
At the
mean,
200 level.
maybe,
That's a target buyer.
I mean, if that changes, the size of the units may have to change. I mean, it's, you know, even affordable housing has to pencil out somehow.
For the other units, price goes up, yeah.
You know.
I have a more, like, I just noticed this was going through here. Like, does everyone use some name generator for streets? Like, it seems like one of the streets is the exact same as Minturn North.
Well,
Can we, like-
I'm wondering if any of these sales falls through with the higher interest rates now, if the AMI might be, the lower AMI might be relevant. I think that's probably the only issue left for us. Because theoretically, some of these people might not be able to afford them, who could have afforded it a couple of years ago when interest rates were low.
Yeah, I think they would have dropped if that would have been the case. Drop the reservations.
You don't know though,
No, but that would be my,
and they
Yes.
wouldn't know until they saw the actual numbers. And they,
Well, I think-
since this has sort of been revived from the dead a bit, I think that's the only issue here.
Well, that brings the question, the four that have a reserve are aware of what the price is.
sorry.
The developer has the prices, you just don't have that information. So
Correct.
the question obviously is the four that have it reserved at whatever the current price is. Not,
It's still at the 200%.
understood. I'm just saying is there a price associated with these properties right now?
I'm sure my clients, like Michael said, penciling this out, he's got that. I just don't.
It seems we should know that.
Honestly, I feel that we were on the 200 and we just changed it last meeting to 120. I just feel that we owe it to you to really stick to the 200, but that's just my feeling.
That's where I am too, and also they've gone above and beyond with deed restrictions across the whole development, which
Yeah.
I think is like a sign to.
If we had first reading on May 15th, this wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, it wouldn't be here. Yeah.
I agree with you, Gusty.
Well, 120% is what we now have formerly in the code, correct?
Yeah.
Right. That went into effect at what?
Last meeting.
Last meeting we voted it in.
As official for the code as well as in this. Yeah, I don't know.
What's the typical treatment if something's in process and something you pass something that changes? How does that?
In this case, the AMI provisions were written into the code or into the PUD itself. So I would say that the provisions of the PUD language control, unless if this council directs that we modify the PUD language.
And PUD language still says 200%.
It still says 200%. We've raised this as a question with you, but we have not modified the language in the PUD.
Well, to be blunt and to go with precedent, the fact of the matter is, there were a variety of things that transpired during the duration of Minturn North. But they were grandfathered based on their original application date, for what it's worth. So I think it's more appropriate to leave it at 200% for this particular applicant.
Brian, you're assuring us that the people that have paid down at the 200 level reserved that they are locals in Eagle County.
I mean, they would have to be in terms of the other requirements for that level, is what I was just telling Tom.
And Mr. Mayor, again, as part of recording the final plat, there will be documents related to affordable housing that get put into place. And there will be a review by the Eagle County Home Store to make sure that the residents occupying that property conform with the requirements.
On that, I will open for public comment. Anybody on Zoom land, Jay?
There is nobody with their hand raised, no.
All right, anybody in the audience have any thoughts, questions, concerns? Seeing none, I will close public comment. All right. Council, if anyone has any other questions, otherwise we will take a motion.
I'm just looking to see where this, in the actual resolution,
Actually,
is just ordinance.
Ordinance, yeah. 14.
So for that purposes, the paragraph that addresses that in the memo is adequate?
I'm sorry, Todd, where are you looking at?
That's the question. We only have 714 pages, so we should be able to find it immediately.
I'm looking,
14
there's a lot
first.
of plans in here. No, that's ordinance 15.
There's 381 in your packet.
Holy shit, I was like
381.
60 pages off. Yes.
Make a motion, I got it right here.
Yeah.
Page 3.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 14, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn approving the amended and final development plan for planned unit development for Belden Place PUD and amending ordinance number 4, series 2022, and with the 200 AMI.
And I'll second.
All right, we got a motion by Dusty, second by Lynn. Roll call, please.
Dusty, aye.
Tom,
Lynn,
Brian.
Eric, aye.
Earl, I.
Earl, aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item E, ordinance 15.
So, to cut to the chase, this ordinance, consolidates a triplex lot into a single family lot upon which a ADU can also be built. Do we know what page that?
445.
445.
That one read from here.
Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
No, any other changes from second reading?
The only other change noted there, was that we've added language to the plat about these encroachments, that they have to be at least 8 feet above the easement.
Wait, is this where I can say, can we please not have the same road name twice in town now?
You can.
It just seems like, I don't know, it's like the most minor thing on earth, but it seems like we only have 2 PUDs in this tiny town. They both decided to try to name their streets the same thing, right? Silver.
you can.
Things confusing for fire department.
Yeah, the fire department, it's a safety issue, it's a public safety issue. Can we please change the name of one of the streets? It's not the same.
You can condition that based upon the health safety powers of this council to make sure the fire department knows where to go.
I think that's a,
All right, I would agree. Any other questions from council? We'll open for public comment. Anyone on Zoom, Jay?
No, sir, there is not.
Right, anybody from the public audience have any questions or thoughts or concerns? Once, twice. I will close public comment and I will entertain a motion.
Point of order, Mr. Rodine, I would ask if you're gonna condition the approval based upon the change of a name, let's say the name that needs to be changed.
okay, Silver, is it Silver Lane? Silver Loop. I'm trying to scroll, but these files are huge. Okay. Now I'm trying to get to the actual resolution. What's the page number again?
445.
Got 437.
I thought it was 445.
Make a yeah, 15, yeah. Make a motion to approve town of Minturn ordinance number 15, series 2024, an ordinance of the town of Minturn Colorado approving the amended final subdivision plat for Belden Place PUD and amending ordinance number 5, series 2022 with condition that they change the duplicate silver loop name to something that's not being used in town currently.
Second.
Excellent. Got a motion by Brian, second by Tom. Roll call, please.
Custody, aye.
Oh,
Brian, aye.
Eric, aye.
Earl, I.
Motion passes. And on to item F, resolution 26, 2024.
To cut to the chase, as council will recall, we heard an application to dedicate 16 SFEs of water use that were not being used by Minturn North, and dedicate them to use at Belden Place. My memo outlines that the PUD approval itself for Belden can go up as high as 42 SFEs of service. There's language in the SIA that specifically states that beyond 39, the moratorium that's currently in place has to be lifted. The amendment to the subdivision improvement agreement, there was a red line in the packet, but they denote that these additional 16 SFEs are being devoted to Belden Place. Then they apply our current water rights dedication fees to the amounts that need to be paid. Happy to answer any questions.
This is resolution 26.
This is resolution 26, yes.
26.
Page 479.
Questions? Should we open for public comment?
You're welcome to take public comment, yeah.
We'll open it. Open for public comment. Any questions or thoughts on this? Seeing none. I think everybody's here for the next event. I will close public comment. And we'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 26, series 2024, approving an amended site-specific development plan and subdivision improvement agreement for Belden Place Plan Unit Development.
I'll second that.
All right, motion by Tom, second by Gusty, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed, and moving on. We've got item G, resolution 29, series 2024, resolution rescinding cost share agreement.
To cut to the chase, at the time in 2022 that the Belden Place approvals were originally considered, the town had agreed to cost share in the construction of a stormwater pipe underneath Highway 24 across the Boneyard property out to the Eagle River. The town is no longer going to do that. This resolution rescinds a prior resolution that had approved that cost sharing. I would, I guess, just note for council's information that the town had made contacts with the Forest Service as well as with the Eagle County Land Trust, which has a conservation easement across the Boneyard property. This pipe would cross the Boneyard, and we have agreed to cooperate with the applicant to further those applications along, but we're under no obligation to expend any money or, extensive staff time in doing so, but we'll be cooperative in passing off information and being helpful where we can.
Any questions from council? None. I will open for public comment for being transparent. Anybody from the public have anything to say? Seeing none, closing public comment. And on that, I will take a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 29, series 24, a resolution rescinding a cost share agreement for the construction of a stormwater sewer improvement between Miners Base Camp and the town of Minturn.
All right, we got a motion by Gusty, second by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No opposed. And on to resolution, or number 28, series 2024, resolution approving temporary use permit for 171 Main Street. Cindy.
Thank you. The town is requesting approval to install a temporary 20 by 20 tent in an effort to create a consolidated area for bike parking in the downtown. The proposed location is at 171 Main Street, in the side yard next to Colorado Metris and slightly encroaching onto the Holy Toledo lot at 191 Main Street. The town has obtained approval from both property owners to place the tent in this location. The goal of the consolidated parking is to mitigate having bikes sort of strewn about the downtown area and to have one consolidated location. The town owns the tent and would be looking to incorporate some fun color and design elements as well to create a sense of place. We have someone willing to paint the bike racks. We're looking to design a custom sign as well as to create some custom wayfinding signage. Trash and recycling as well as restrooms are also located right in this same area. If approved, we hope to have it up for most of the market season and the remainder of the summer, although likely not in time for the first market, which is happening this Saturday, but hopefully we would be able to get it up next week if approved. There were some specific recommendations made by the Planning Commission, which are listed as part of the resolution. So as we talk through those, if we are to amend any of those recommendations, the resolution will need to be amended as well. A couple of the recommendations, should I jump into those now?
Sure. Yeah, go for it.
Or should I wait?
Yeah.
Okay. For signage, the importance of adequate signage was expressed. I am working closely with our town manager on a strategic wayfinding signage plan. Our goal is to create signage that is clear and helpful without causing confusion and adding to sign pollution. So more to come on that. I did want to bring up, because it was brought up during the Planning Commission meeting, one of the commissioners had suggested that we try to direct cyclists coming from the south to use Eagle River Street and come across Main Street via the main crosswalk. This might prove a little bit difficult. We are definitely open to ideas, but one of the challenges with that is that riders are supposed to ride with traffic, and we would be sending them down a one-way street going against traffic. The other reasons are that it's unlikely to be followed. People are probably going to take the most direct path. And then we also want to create consistency with our signage from both directions. All that said, we do want to create clear, helpful, signage that is Minturn. And so Michelle and I are working with a sign company to customize some wayfinding signage for that. The second recommendation was to put up a fence. There was some concern expressed that bikes might encroach onto the sidewalk in that area because the tent would come pretty close to the sidewalk. Our concern with that is that we've actually found that when there's a structure, whether that be a building, a fence, or any sort of structure, people are more likely to lean their bikes against said structure. And so we're concerned that if we actually put up a fence, people are just going to end up leaning all their bikes up against the fence and actually encroaching onto the sidewalk, potentially more than they would have otherwise. What we're proposing instead is that we place the bike racks strategically in a way that keeps bikes away from the sidewalk. So that is our hope and our intention. And then the third recommendation, which we're completely open to, was it was suggested that the town consider revegetating that lawn after the summer season if it's needed. I will note that staff is very much in support of this, but I would point out that the current condition of that yard is actually quite poor. So you'll see a couple of photos in your packet. A lot of that grass is currently dead, and what's not is overgrown with dandelions, although actually as of today, that's probably not the case because Public Works mowed it today. That is not our property, as you know, so we don't normally maintain that, but we are definitely happy to consider trying to do some revegetation of that area if needed after the summer, if that's determined to be necessary. And then I would just close with that. This is a trial run, and if it's well received, the town might want to consider a more permanent bike parking structure in the future. And if it doesn't work, then we'll look at other solutions going forward.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
A lot of strategery. Like,
Yeah.
I agree.
Sounds like a good idea, though.
I don't agree with the suggestion of going opposite one-way traffic. The reality is they're gonna come down 24.
Yeah, and it's gonna change so much when Minturn North and all that connection gets made and the railroad crossing gets in. I mean, we walked around Vale this past weekend and every bike store is renting bikes and sending people this direction on e-bikes, and it's gonna be, like, if I'm a business owner down there, I'd be like, let's get some chargers going, let's figure out ways to get those people in my establishment, so it's gonna change a lot.
Take notes, Larry.
Questions?
Cindy, are we thinking about doing a shift e-bike outlet here?
We're
Yeah.
not yet, just due to cost. That was explored, was that last year? I think we actually looked at it for this year. There's a significant cost to participate in the Shift e-bike program. We do want to still consider that, I think, in the future, but it was not approved in the budget for this year.
Okay, I understand.
So it's definitely something we can look at for 25.
In light of our local e-bike dealer, retailer, repairman, I think they'll do fine.
Excellent. Well, in transparency, I'll open for public comment. Anyone in the public have any thoughts? Name and address for the record, please.
Kelly Toon, 531 Main Street. First I've heard of this. I do think analyzing human behavior, they're gonna do whatever they wanna do and whatever's easiest. So I wouldn't try to direct them any particular route. And even the bike path, which got built and now leads to a dirt road that used to be somewhat concrete. But it's gonna be hard to get people from Vale on that. I don't even think there's good signage right now.
Oh, as far as the bike path?
The bike path leading us, because we do have a lot of e-bikes that will be coming from Vale. Just something I've seen, and everyone just tends to ride Highway 24, which is actually a lot harder on a bike because it's weavy and goes up and down. So it's actually easier going on County Road, but most people don't know that.
We can talk with Eco Trails about signage too and inquire
Yeah,
about
but
what's being done.
currently, I don't know. Does anyone know how long County Road will be unpaved
Till
through
next
the
season.
Minturn North?
Till next year.
Till next year. So this whole summer, it's kind of ironic. We had half of it paved and then half of it is now paved and the other half is not paved now. So, and then I kind of question doing a whole tent structure and wasting the money on that, where I just think a bike rack would be sufficient and possibly a tool area to, which I've seen in other communities where you can pump your bike up.
We have
and,
talked about trying to potentially obtain a bike repair stand. And I was gonna reach out to Brady and some other folks for recommendations of other things we could put there. The tent was a suggestion for just sort of creating sense of place. We own the tent, so there's not per se a cost. There's some cost, I guess, to putting it up, but that's just staff labor. So we own all the tent and the supplies for the tent, so we're not purchasing a tent.
Unless citizens want to volunteer.
Yeah, we'd happily accept volunteers, I'll let you.
But
But
is it gonna be put up permanently?
No, it
I
would be
mean,
it would be
'cause
temporary
I
for
just
the
worry
summer.
about winds and tent structures.
And this is a heavy duty tent, so I should clarify, but no, it would be temporary for the summer. And this is a very heavy duty tent that we don't normally use, but, and it has to be staked in, hence it's not a pop-up, it's not a canopy, it's a more involved, install. We have called, in case anybody's wondering, we've done the utility locates, but it would be looking.
This time.
Yeah, that wasn't that. So that's been done, and we would look to keep it up for the summer, and like I said, kind of see how it goes. And I think, again, just more to create a sense of place, but we likely would keep it, you know, weather permitting, we can keep walls open on certain sides and have other things like a bike repair stand or other things available. There's trash and recycling right there, and the market restrooms are already up for the summer, and those are right there too. So there's definitely, you know, quite a bit of things happening right there, but we're open to suggestions on how we can make it more of a place. So definitely.
Well, I do think with the expense of today's bikes, having something, the
Vis-
most important thing is something to chain it up to for visitors
That and visibility,
and
'cause
for
it
the
was,
market.
it was also brought up, I think in the planning commission meeting that, you know, why that location was chosen, and a big part of that reason is visibility. And we have tried in the past to have bike racks at Eagle River Park with some signage, and I think people are concerned about having their bikes back behind, you know, the Main Street area because they people pay a lot of money for these bikes and they want to have,
They
you
want
know,
to be
more
close
eyes
to it
on
and
them,
see
yes.
them.
So that was the other reason for this location, is it's just very central, there's a lot of eyes on it, you know, there's a lot of activity in that area, so we feel it's a safe area to be able to do that. But we're definitely open to ongoing suggestions to improve it, so happy to chat more, and please, you know, I've taken notes, but feel free to send me any suggestions
And I
that you
think
guys have.
like having just, instead of a sign, just a bright red bike up high somewhere above it, just as a visual, you know, and like the old days they used to have a peg outside a deli, and that way they're not adding more signage,
Right,
and people will figure it out if it's visible.
sure.
Thanks, Kelly.
We'll just bring the chicken man in.
It's a good idea that you could use it for other things during the week. You know, people can come in when it's out of the rain, you have some seating in there. That would be a nice amenity.
Anyone else from public? All right, closing public comment. And I will take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 28, Series 2024, a resolution approving a temporary use application TU 01-2024 at 171 Main Street and 191 Main Street, Town of Minturn.
Second.
All right, motion by Gussie, second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Unopposed, that passes. And probably on to the main event. Item I, ordinance number 16, series 2024, first reading. Amending town historic register to add 478 Eagle Street. There's,
That is me.
yes.
So just to kind of give you all an outline, I'll be going through the staff report as in the packet, as well as summarizing the HPC discussion and recommendation that happened last night at last night's HPC meeting. So, of course, I have the wrong thing. There we go. Okay. This is a nomination application submitted by Ms. Tracy Anderson under two different criteria. One, distinctive characteristics of a type, period, method of construction or artisan, and a subset of that criteria, exemplifies specific elements of an architectural style or period, and represents a style that is particular to the town. And the second criteria is geographic importance, and a subset of that criteria is enhances the sense of identity of the town or community. So in response to criteria 1, per the nomination application, the property is a rustic wood home near the Eagle River in Minturn. This single-family 2-bedroom home was built in 1943, making it eligible for historic preservation. It personifies the essence of Minturn. Its appearance is largely the same as when it was originally constructed 80-plus years ago. It underwent improvements in 1949, which is still at the 75-year threshold, which do not impact its exterior appearance. The primary building material is log, which was a relatively common building mainstay at the time of construction. Based on staff's response to that blurb from the nomination application, log house historically denotes a more permanent hewn log dwelling, either 1 or 2 stories of more complex design, often built as a second-generation replacement. Many of the earliest 18th and early 19th century log houses were traditionally clad sooner or later with wood siding or stucco. and this is from Baumberger, which was cited in the staff report. This log house is untraditional in regards to the established Rocky Mountain cabin. Again from Baumberger, while the entrance doorway to most earlier log houses was generally placed beneath the eaves as a means of adapting to the greater snowfall in the Rockies, here the entrance was placed in a gable end and sometimes protected from roof slides by a porch supported by 2 corner posts created by an extension of the roof beyond the gable wall. And staff's response to that was the entrance to this log house is not on the gable end, nor is it protected by a porch, making it an unusual log structure built within the Rocky Mountains. In response to the second criteria, geographic importance, again from the nomination application, this particular home was built in 1942, just as the war was getting underway. That year, Camp Hale was constructed as a temporary training camp for the 10th Mountain Division. The highway over to Battle Mountain had been completed 6 years prior to this. The mine in Gilman was operating at close to full capacity and was an important part of Minturn's history as an authentic working town. The railroad played a key role in the town's economic development as well during the time frame. Given the continual teardown of Minturn's historic homes and other historic structures, the preservation of this property serves to encapsulate a sliver of the town's history and can serve as a reminder to those who visit the town of its amazing history. Minturn is a tourist town, and visitors who travel to see it, especially in the summer and fall months, will be rewarded to see this house on their walking tour. Visitation to Minturn is projected to increase this summer and beyond due to the recent designation of Camp Hale as a national monument, which is roughly 15 miles north on Highway 24. And so staff's response to that criteria is log structures, both historic and not, can be seen all over the state of Colorado and indeed in many states. 478 Eagle River Street is a lot that is adjacent to the river, but can also be viewed from Main Street as you walk by. This structure is a familiar sight to any locals who have lived in or frequented Minturn. So it's a summary of the staff report. The HBC took this up at their meeting last night. Several things were discussed. One, the suitability of the structure as a whole, especially based on the inspection report that was included in both of y'all's packets. And whether or not the historic integrity still remained due to the purported add-ons that had happened, likely unpermitted. And so based on all of that, the Historic Preservation members, all 4 of them forwarded a recommendation of denial with the statement or findings of fact that this structure did not meet the historic preservation criteria.
And of course, questions from council.
Pretty straightforward.
Alrighty. Shall we, Earl, did you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay. I will move to public comment then. Open it up for public comment. Anybody who wishes to speak? Name and address.
My name is David Ford. I'm the owner, along with my wife, Lily Ford.
State your address. Name and address, please.
478 Eagle River Street.
Thank you.
My wife Lily and I have fallen in love with Minturn over the past 3 years, drawn in by its eclectic charm and warm, close-knit community. However, what truly sets Minturn apart is its people. Their warmth, sense of community, eccentricity, and authenticity are the heart and soul of this town, and the reason we wanted to call it home. It's the unique spirit of the residents that makes Minturn an extraordinary place to live, and it is the spirit that we hope to honor and enhance with our plans for 478 Eagle River Street. I personally have been coming to Minturn for almost 10 years, dreaming of buying a house on the river to share with family and friends and eventually pass down to our kids. As a man of faith, 2 years ago, I wrote down "lot in Minturn" on a piece of paper and placed it in what I call my God box. This place is a place where I place my dreams, intentions, and prayers for others in hopes that these things manifest. When 478 Eagle River Street became available, we jumped on it. Although we knew there was a process involved in getting a demo permit, we never anticipated that the dilapidated structure would ever get nominated for historic designation. We understand the importance of preserving Minturn's historical character, and it is with this respect that we address you today. Our intention is to replace the existing neglected structure with a new home that aligns with the aesthetic and spirit of our town. While we have provided a detailed letter outlining our plans, we wanted to personally convey our thoughts tonight. The current building is in a state of severe disrepair. Over the years, it has become a patchwork of unpermitted add-ons from the 70s and 80s, which have compromised its historical and structural integrity. According to the inspection report, the house is unsafe with serious issues such as structural weaknesses, mold, and asbestos, to name a few. These are not just cosmetic flaws, but hazards that threaten the safety and well-being of anyone who enters the property as well as our neighbors. It is also important to note that we feel the structure does not meet the criteria for historic designation. The HPC's regulations specify that a building must at least be 75 years old to be considered historic. And this one does not qualify in our opinion because of all of the additions over time have essentially made this building newer than 75 years. Moreover, the original structure has been so extensively altered that any historical value it may have had is no longer recognizable. When we purchased the property, the previous owner did not consider it historic either, as it was listed on the MLS as a tear down, and I quote, "The house needs to be scraped. The potential is the lot on the river." The HPC does not consider it historic either, as it voted unanimously last night against designation. The nominator classified the property as a rustic log home, but staff's report describes the structure as untraditional in relation to the Rocky Mountain cabin style. In contrast, truly rustic structures like the Tigawon Community House on Notch Mountain maintain their historical integrity and serve as genuine representations of our heritage. 478 Eagle River Street does not. Furthermore, the existing house has long been an eyesore, detracting from the beauty of our town. Our neighbors share our enthusiasm for a new home and also recognize that the current structure does not enhance the town's identity. And the town deserves better. We acknowledge the town's concerns about new constructions and their impact on our community's character. However, preserving a non-historic, dilapidated building is not the solution, in our opinion. Our goal is to build a home that respects and complements the community, something that both we and our neighbors can take pride in. In conclusion, we respectfully request that you follow HPC's unanimous recommendation against designation. Doing so would allow us to proceed with our plans to replace the unsafe, deteriorating structure with a new home that will contribute positively to the fabric of Minturn. Thank you.
My name's David McMillan at 822 Main Street. Fordo's a friend of mine. I bought my house from Tom Sullivan 10 years ago. And we love Minturn. I've been coming here since the 70s with my parents. And he said it very well. I was well spoken, and I just wanted to reiterate what he said. It's a tear down. I mean, y'all have probably seen it. It's a tear down. We love Minturn. Nobody wants to turn Minturn into Vail or Beaver Creek. That's why we're here. When I bought Tom's house, I didn't even look anywhere else. I just came here for Minturn. So I just wanted to add my support to my friend Fordo. Thanks. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Pukas, P.O. Box 288, Gypsum, Colorado 81637. I'm an architect, and in full disclosure, I've been talking with David Ford for the past 6 months or more about possibly entering into an agreement to design a home for him on this property. Madison, can I make a request of you? Can you read the email that you read last night? Was that presented to council in their packet today?
But it was not, the packet went out on Friday and I only got that email. So, but I would be reading it into the record.
Can you read it, or is that not appropriate?
Okay.
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 Should we finish public comment before we?
Yeah, let's, and Madison had already indicated that the letter would be read into the public record, so.
Okay, there was just a point I wanted to make about the historic designation process. But briefly, in my opinion, I've been designing homes here in Minturn for 21 years since I've had my own practice. I've worked on several homes that have been renovated that are older homes. Whether or not they would be considered historic, that would be up to some sort of a formal designation. But in my opinion, this particular project, this particular existing structure doesn't deserve to be designated as a historic property, primarily because it's been added onto in a very haphazard manner over a number of years with no record of any building permits being pulled, no record of any sort of design or building professionals being involved, no inspections were ever done. The only part of the structure that seems to be within that 75-year limit is the original log structure, and only 2 walls of that original log structure are visible. This west wall facing Eagle River Street and the north wall that would go towards I-70. The rest of the structure has been added on to so many times, as David very eloquently wrote, that it takes away from any historic significance that may have been there. The existing structure in its current state with the haphazard additions is subpar even for the time period that it may have been built, whether it was 50s, 60s, or 70s. It's a very haphazard, substandard state of construction, and I don't know that it would be condemnable, but it would be questionable about someone living in its current state.
Anyone else? Jay, anyone on Zoom?
No, sir, there is not.
All right, I will close public comment. Or did you need to read it first?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Point of correction.
So I'm actually going to summarize the email, and then I forwarded to Jay to include as part of the record. So this was forwarded to me by the property owners. It's an email from Ms. Tracy Anderson, the nominator, who sent it in early May. Essentially it's describing that Minturn is becoming a different place since Ms. Tracy moved to town. Especially in regards to the type of people moving here and tearing down structures and building large houses in the place of those older, smaller historic structures, or historic in the terms of when they were built, rather, not their designation. And so that is why the designation was submitted, and it's stated that, you know, the nomination, not the designation, the nomination process, does not really mean anything other than a deeper look into things. And so I just wanted to kind of summarize that, and then that'll be included in the minutes.
Thank you. All right, now I will close public comment. Back to council.
Yeah, my only comment on this one is this, I got it in regards to the submission is simply to highlight a process, but it does highlight a concern about nominations solely based on age as opposed to historic relevance. And I appreciate the Historic Preservation Committee for doing their job. But those are wasted man hours. So I just beseech town residents, yes, we want to preserve the town of Minturn, but please, just because it's old, falling apart, it's an outhouse, whatever it is, does not make it historic. So think twice before you submit it. I'm not suggesting you can't, but it is what it is.
Thank you. Earl?
I agree with the owners. It should be torn down. It's a mess.
I think a factor that is important to me is that it is off Main Street and not anywhere on a side street where very few people go, and no one. And in that sense, I don't think it significantly contributes to the character of the town. It is a mess, I agree with that. But mostly the addition parts you don't really see. But I don't think it deserves to be a historic building.
So on that note,
I will take a motion.
make a motion to deny the historic landmark nomination application for 478 Eagle River Street.
Second.
Got a motion by Tom, second by Brian. We will do roll call.
Dusty, aye.
Tom, aye.
Lynn, I.
Brian, aye.
Eric, aye.
And Earl, aye.
Motion passes. Welcome to town. All right. I'm going to say a 5-minute recess.
Did you text him in that?
We will reconvene. All right, thank you, everybody. We will reconvene the meeting after a short recess. Moving on to discussion and direction items. Starting with item A, resolution by the stakeholders for a downtown development authority and ballot question. This has Cindy's name on it.
Yes, it does. Claremont, thank you. So many of you may be familiar over the past few years, literally I think it's been about 3 years now, with help from Downtown Colorado, Inc., ongoing discussions and meetings have taken place with town staff, town council, and our downtown stakeholders regarding the potential creation of a downtown development authority for Minturn. The town's seen several changes in the downtown more recently, including some property ownership changes and some new businesses coming in. So over the past few months, we have re-engaged our new and existing stakeholders, and we've done this in an effort to gauge interest in a DDA for Minturn. If there is support, then next steps would be to move toward a ballot initiative. So at this stage, what we're asking is for our downtown stakeholders to provide their input to council regarding whether they support or oppose a DDA ballot initiative. We have a few stakeholders here in attendance that we'll hear from. I believe we have a few on Zoom, and we've received some emails from others who could not be here tonight. In addition to the emails that were included in the packet, I've since received one additional email that I will add into the record as well. But before we hear from our stakeholders in attendance, I'd also like to introduce Bill Schrum from DCI, who has been our steadfast consultant over the past 3 years, helping us through this process. I'd like to give him an opportunity to add any comments. Bill is joining us via Zoom, and both he and I are available for questions.
Thank you, Cindy, and Mayor and Council. I'd just like to add that we had some very robust discussions amongst the 3 different meetings that we had, and I greatly appreciate the stakeholders who attended each of the meetings, as well as those in town who showed up for the open house that we had, asking a lot of great questions and providing their feedback that we've been able to present to you today.
So I guess with that, I'll ask some of our stakeholders to give us their thoughts on whether they would support this initiative, and we'll go from there. I guess I'll start with our in-person attendees.
Larry Stone, 152 Main Street. I think that the DDA is a grand opportunity for our town to seize the energy and effort of a lot of new stakeholders that have come into town. It's been the first time in many years that we haven't had one main property owner and then a bunch of tenants renting from that property owner. The creativity, the energy, the positive things that are happening is really exciting for the town. And it's been a long time coming. I feel like this DDA could be a great vehicle for us. And so I just want to voice my being in favor for it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Spence Neubauer, 161 Main Street. I'm also in support of the DDA. I think we're in a unique time where there's a lot, like Larry said, there's a lot of, they're selling off those properties to a lot of local owners, that there's this great spot we're in where redevelopment can start to happen, I think, with local input, and we can really reuse that money back into the town. So I'm in support of the DDA, and I'm in support of the debt authorization as well.
Thank you, Spence. Jay, do we have anyone on Zoom that has their hand raised that would like to chime in?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Oh, shoot, okay. I know we had someone on earlier, but they may have had to drop off. Tierney, are you on by chance?
She was on and she has dropped off.
He has dropped off, okay. Would this be an appropriate time to read the additional email that I got?
Sure.
Okay. So you did see in your packet, we had a few emails from a few folks who couldn't be here this evening. I have since received one additional one just today from Marco Tanazzi, who is currently in Italy. He emailed, I approve the recommendation to create a DDA in downtown Minturn, and I approve the recommendation to adopt a debt authorization ballot measure. So I wanted to add that as well.
Thoughts from council?
One question, the new map, or I should say, is this a new map? I don't see a label to it, but it says section 13, item A. So does that now, as opposed to the original proposal, include the business park and pretty much every business down 24? Which I would be in favor of. Just want to make sure that's the case and we're not focused on the 100 block.
I understand. That's, I'm gonna, Bill, do you want to take that since it's kind of a loaded question?
Sure.
Or loaded answer, not a loaded question. It's a loaded answer.
Well, I think appropriately, we can always say it's complicated, right? But the map that is in the packet is the result of the discussion from our third stakeholder meeting and feedback from all of the open house attendees. So there was a variety of folks that provided input on sites that they felt would best qualify to be participants within the DDA. And during the third stakeholder meeting, that map that you see in the packet was the result of all of that being distilled by those attendees.
The pink one.
Yes.
Okay.
Without seeing exactly what you're pointing or referring to, I would assume yes.
You created it, it's your map.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the crowd and I can't really see what you might be referring to, but I assume it is.
Can I show it? Oh.
Can I ask a question? Bill, I know it's late, and I'm surprised that there are not more stakeholders that are here and present. It may be because it's
late,
the time or whatever. But do you have a number of stakeholders that have participated, been in favor of? Because I have gathered an overwhelming sense of positive response from all of the people who have attended all three meetings. And it would be nice to share with the council at least a number. So it's more than just two people up here.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that, Larry. I believe I received a total of 6 different emails, all of which were in support. And Cindy, the emails of those that are not in attendance, you were copied on those. So I believe that those were included in the packet.
We should, if there are any that you received that are not in the packet, please let me know. The ones I was copied on are definitely in the packet. So I believe I only have 4. So maybe there were 2 additional.
And then Spence and Larry both emailed me as well. So, but I'll just share as well for the council that in all of the discussions that we've had, and straw polls and other I guess litmus tests of, you know, where the sentiment was of the stakeholders who were in attendance and participated in the open house. We did not have anyone that actually was not in favor of the DDA. So there was pretty overwhelmingly positive support for this measure.
And if I'm not mistaken, some of those stakeholders actually have multiple stakes.
Yes.
If you consider MR Minturn, who is in favor of this, they have several pieces of property, along with tenants who were in favor of this.
Well, I don't know that we
That's
need-
exactly right.
I don't know that we need to necessarily belabor it any further. I think the council was in favor in the first place, but all we need is to submit guidance to proceed with ballot.
Correct, we would just need clear direction from council on moving forward.
Okay.
Yeah, my support. I went to your open house that you hosted, and everybody there was, you know, excited about it. I mean, and it seemed like a pretty good turnout, so that shows that, you know, businesses are wanting it.
It was a good turnout, and as Bill had mentioned, everyone that was at the open house was strongly in support. Again, I knew obviously some people weren't able to attend or send in their emails. We have had many conversations with a couple people who also are not in the meeting tonight, but that were strongly in support. So I think we have a good engaged group of downtown stakeholders.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, I just want to endorse everything everybody's saying. I think the stakeholders are probably 100% supportive of this measure. And they understand the benefits of it, and I understand the benefits to our town as well. So I think it's a good thing to move forward on.
I would say just looking at the map, I noticed there's a couple residential items in there. Are we gonna kind of clean that up just to make sure they're either not forced to be included?
Thank you. Yeah, that's, and then the other area, I guess I should mention too, so part of what this map reflects, and I can let Bill talk more about this, is we have some right-of-way options where we can extend us to a certain part of town via the right-of-way, and then have certain properties included and residential properties, for example, not included. Down the road, any adjacent property to what's already part of the district can then opt in. So we have opt-in opportunities down the road. Looking north, it was suggested that it might make sense to try to go as far north as the Dowd parcel. And so we could do that, I believe, and Bill, correct me if I'm speaking out of turn here, but do that via the right-of-way. But there are some things that are still outstanding. We are having a conversation tomorrow, I think, with the Forest Service, because if we're going to include that as, say, our tail end of it, there has to be some sort of understanding between us and the Forest Service. They have some restrictions on what they can and can't do, obviously, with their parcels, so that's a bigger conversation. So this map would likely still require a little bit of editing before we submit a final draft to come forward with the ballot initiative.
And sorry, and a follow-up on that, going south, potentially if Battle Mountain does commercial down there, could that extend all the way to them via?
Bill, did you catch that question?
I did. I believe the question was Battle Mountain, if it could extend to them. And the issue would be if a district was created at the beginning, you can include right-of-way as a part of that district formation. Beyond that, you would need to have that right-of-way petition to join, unless it's owned by the town. Otherwise, you would need to have congruity amongst the parcels to a parcel that's adjacent for anything additionally included. So that's why the boundaries are going to need to be somewhat strategic, especially given the pockets of commercial activity within Minturn. And I think that moving forward, the next step here is over the next month to do a little bit more due diligence about exactly what those boundaries might look like. And my task, as I understand it, is to provide as much information as I can to the council to make informed decisions about what the best potential boundaries could potentially be.
Thank you. say I've seen a lot of thumbs up.
So other than everybody's in favor of continuing to pursue the DDA, what else do you need?
I think that's it right now. Bill, can you just clarify, I cannot talk anymore. Clarify for me, with regard to the map, we are still able to make changes up until we come back before council, is that correct? Or what are your recommendations?
Yeah, you can even make changes basically at the second reading. So essentially the next steps would be to prepare a first reading of the ballot measure. The ballot measure must include political boundaries of a map that would be proposed to be included of the district. And we can work with legal counsel to draft that. And that boundary proposal would then be part of the consideration of the council to make amendments to however you see fit. And then that can also be done at second reading. But ideally, for ballot measures, it needs to be approved on the second reading at your scheduled meeting in August to be done in time for the upcoming November election. So there are 2 more opportunities potentially to have the council weigh in on final boundaries before this is all said and done.
Okay,
Directions that.
thank you.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and well, I would recommend we go ahead and go with the motion on the first reading, and we can always continue a second reading. But I think the ballot issue is certainly a deadline we need to make.
That's all we got. On to item B, short-term rental policy review.
Okay.
Excuse me, if I can interject, the direction given was to proceed with the election, correct? The ballot question and election.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. One moment, okay. Short-term rental policy discussion. Staff is requesting to discuss and receive direction from council on potential changes to the current short-term rental policies. This is due to both recommendations from council members as well as community input on the most recent Minturn community survey. As you all know, we established our short-term rental guidelines and ordinance in 2017. And since that time, the general policy has remained largely unchanged. And so we are just asking to take a look at the policy and to evaluate whether the current policies and regulations are sufficient and discuss any proposed changes.
Thank you. So yeah, I think for council, any questions you guys have on this, I think the packet detailed it pretty well, but the big impetus for this discussion was to kind of relook at it, was that we want to try and encourage more locals to be here full time and not have people buy homes, construct them, take several years, and immediately start short-term rental.
So more and more communities are just outlawing short-term rentals altogether. There's been kind of a sea of change in the last 5 years. And what is our cap?
Our cap is 50 units or 10% of our current housing inventory. We have not come close to that yet. Currently, we're at about 28. We've never exceeded 30. It fluctuates a little bit because we often have new people entering that market, but then we have had some folks switch from short-term to long-term. Properties have sold, people have moved, things like that. So it tends to hover between 25 and 30.
I would be in favor of reducing the cap.
Thought on that. My opinion, occupancy for 2 years, yes. As far as the cap is concerned, so we're not dealing with this later, I would just take the percentage out. I'm okay at 50 based on what Cindy's saying, and the reason I say that is as we have more growth, I don't want to revisit that number. I would rather it just sits there. It's 50, and when Minturn North, Belden, and Battle are done in total, I might revisit it again, because then 50 is going to be a heck of a lot lower than 10% ultimately. But that's my 2 cents.
I understand the occupancy for 2 years, what the goal was on it, but I was worried, the first thing that went through my mind, well, that means somebody could actually rent that place for 2 years and then all of a sudden they can short-term rent it. I think we should have verbiage in there that says you must own it or something besides just occupy it.
Oh, no, the existing verbiage says you have to own it for 2 years. The
Yeah, that's
challenge,
existing.
right, the reason this was brought up is that.
Okay, as long as it's in, I just don't wanna see people
we
coming
wouldn't
in
take
and
that
living
out.
in the place and then, short-terming it after 2 years, so then we're kinda going backwards that way.
Right, this was brought up because we've had people own the property for 2 years. Say they bought a property, but they wanted to build and they didn't build right away, and then as soon as they built, they short-term rented the new build because they were within the guidelines because
Okay.
they owned the property.
Now I'm in favor of that
This
then.
would
Yeah.
essentially encourage people, hopefully, to long-term rent for those first 2 years and then, or live there. I say they could long-term rent, I think, long-term rent or live there for 2 years before they would short-term rent. Brian, you have a concern?
That's just like, it seems like, I don't know if Gusie's trying to get there, it's like, welcome to the community, you finally found a place to rent.
Oh.
You're out for 2 years when you finally met your neighbors and you've like, kids are starting to become friends and everything, and then you like get them booted out for a short-term rental.
Oh, I see.
Well, I think it's an owning.
I'm kind of thinking that if you, wondering what percentage of rentals, period, of long-term rentals there are in town. Instead of comparing it to just the number of units in town, I think we should think about it in terms of comparing it to the number of long-term rentals.
I don't think we have any accurate way to measure that.
Rentals over 30 days, and I would guess, but I don't know, that it's a those 28 short-term rentals are a big percentage of total rentals in town.
That's hard to say, of course, but I don't think we have an accurate way to measure that.
But back to the 2 year, the intent is own and occupy, not somebody comes in, buys a place, rents it out for 2 years, long-term, and then transitions to short-term. It is, you own it, you live in it.
That's not stipulated right now, so it's
I'm
just.
saying.
You're saying
For
you
2
would wanna
years.
stipulate that. Okay.
Well, because if you read the notes, it says occupancy for 2 years versus simply owning the property for 2 years. So as far as I'm concerned, it's an own and an occupy for 2 years.
Yeah.
Then you may be able to talk about it.
I agree.
Obviously, we want to incentivize long-term rentals. Because God knows not everybody can afford to buy a place, and clearly the rental car cost these days is awful.
My general take is pretty quick, like, I think we should cap it to where it is right now, moratorium, let the current ones keep going. And then allow, if somebody's like, cause affordability is hard right now, allow somebody to like rent out a bedroom in their own house if they're set up to do so, to help, as long as they're full-time occupied there. So if they're trying to like help make their rent or whatever it is, let them do that. But then like completely cap it and then try to do a better job of allowing like a bed and breakfast
But that's more
type business in like a 100 block or something.
Cap it at 28 or at 50,
Or just cap it right now and then work towards 0.
50.
at 28.
Cap it as current ones are still going, so 28, whatever it is, they're allowed to
I can
continue.
get you the exact number, but.
And then if that property changes or that license expires, then we're back to 27. And then eventually it works its way down to 0 unless you're living in it and it's full-time occupied. Or I think like it's an Airbnb or a hotel at that point, you just run it like that.
Well, Airbnb, you're running it.
Sorry, not a short-term, a hotel or a bed and breakfast is what I meant.
Well, now it's commercial.
Exactly.
What we're driving at, though, short-term rental piece, again, think about what I'm talking about in regards to properties. You're talking 50 properties for essentially the current build-out. It's gonna get up in the 800s. That's what we're looking at when you add all those in, and you're still capped at 50. That's it. What you're suggesting.
Capping it at 28.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived in too many places and been to too many places that I've seen like just totally wrecked by short-term rentals.
Oh, I'm not arguing the downside of it. I'm suggesting your proposal in regards to like a bedroom is a different animal, because now we're going down the road of ADU. We're talking short-term rental, you're talking Airbnb, the entire, unless it's a lock-off.
Well, I should clarify, we have several properties where someone might have a lock-off or exactly an ADU or something on their property, and some of those homeowners live on the property and they still rent out that separate unit short-term.
I would say like ADU shouldn't count, because an ADU should be a long-term rental. That's you know, but like
an ADU is.
A walk-off would be different than an ADU in my opinion.
Well, okay, so we would.
Again, that's why I'm saying you have to understand what you're suggesting you cap.
Yeah.
Right.
So I know, but I'm saying you're talking about a bedroom or you're talking about an ADU that you're capping. So bear in mind for a minute, you're talking somebody that in order for them to afford to be a resident here, to own that property, they need a rent. Now, I would love to drive them towards long-term rental. That'd be great.
This seems like a work session kind of issue.
It may be.
So I could name, I don't want to name names, but I could think of 2 properties in this town. One of them, literally, there's a bedroom with a separate entrance with no kitchen, nothing like that. And it can be used for family, or they can lock the inside off like a true lock off and rent it off short term. ADUs, I think we bend over backwards in the code to do some like, you know, we give them an SFE break, we do some things to encourage ADU building. And I don't think if we are encouraging something, then we should turn around and let them short term rent it. I think that should be like an ADU is a full term rental.
Earl, you got your hand raised?
Full disclosure, I do have a short-term rental. I spent $160 grand to build it. That said, I am supporting the revisions, but we have to, I would go along with leave it at 50, because there are benefits that happen with them. Short-term rentals help people stay in Minturn. They also create lodging tax and sales tax for the town, and they also create customers for our businesses. And so cap it at 50, trying to work its way down it could be hurting longtime locals who are using a bedroom or a garage apartment or something to help their budget as they move forward. And being able to stay in town. So I just wanted to get that out there. Short-term rentals are not a nightmare. I think we've managed everything quite well, but I understand the demand we need for long-term rentals as well. So I just like a balanced approach, but you know, there is a place for short-term rentals at Minturn, but I am fully on board with limiting in a reasonable way the growth of them.
Do we have any? Sorry, go ahead, Len.
I think if you have a room in your house you're renting out, or something attached to your house that you're renting out, that shouldn't be counted towards the cap. I think what we're really talking about is properties which are discrete, separate, independent buildings that instead of housing residents are focused on getting tourists here for 30 days or less.
Can I just jump in real quick? So I wanted to clarify too and jump on kind of something that Earl said. So 2 thoughts here. He does bring up a good point about lodging. Obviously, we need to think about locals housing and we need to think long-term, but given our limited lodging options for commercial lodging in town, short-term rentals do play a factor in visitation and people actually staying in Minturn. So I would just, mention that. And then as far as we talked about, there is a difference obviously with people living on the property and having a short-term rental. So for example, Earl has an ADU, but he lives on the property, he lives there. We have another property owner in town that has an ADU on the property, but he lives in the main house. So I think, again, like you said, it's different if you're talking about a property where the whole property is rented out short-term, the owner doesn't live here, that's a little different scenario. I think we might need to, I guess, encourage council to think about the ones who are actually living here locally in short-term renting or living on the property. But that's obviously for you guys to decide. A work session might make sense to do a deeper dive into some of these things, but those are just two things I want to.
Do we have any recourse if somebody's running an illegal short-term rental?
We do, and
Is it like where you lose your privilege and you
Yes.
can't ever do it, or?
Currently it's not, you can't ever, there's I think a 2-year period where they can't, we've only had it happen literally once or twice where, maybe twice, where we found someone and they claimed they didn't know they had to be licensed and then they came into compliance. So it hasn't really been an issue, but certainly it could. I try to look pretty regularly, but it's me manually looking online to try
Right,
to
yeah, you gotta
find
find it
people
on one of the
that-
websites that
or
has it listed.
and people can report them to us, obviously. If someone thinks that their neighbor is operating one that's not licensed,
I would just
they can
suggest-
certainly report that to us. I will add, just from a staff standpoint, that I've only literally ever had a complaint about one property of all of our short-term rentals in, I don't know,
Tens of those
how,
properties.
in however long I've been doing this.
I would just recommend we push this to a work session. Part one.
I agree.
We're gonna be here all night, and I'm
Right.
hungry, because all we got was fruit and cookies.
That's right.
So, just saying.
Cookies.
It sounds like the consensus is to continue discussion on this item.
Is there a public hearing?
Oh.
No, there's no.
Yes.
Public- Yeah, waiting here for public.
Thank you. I'm very hungry too, Tom. Larry's
Yeah.
from 152 Main Street. I want to get out of here as well. I just want to share briefly that Helen's House is a short-term rental. It was a fully short-term rental before Jane and I decided to go separate ways with our lives. So we were renting out the entire home. With our separation, it provided an opportunity where I live downstairs and there's 3 rooms upstairs. There was $900 brought into the town just for the $300 per bedroom. The people that have come in to Helen's House have shared, I never knew Minturn even existed. I've heard so many comments about people who said, I'll never go and stay in Vail again now that I know Minturn is here. We bring a lot of first-time people into this community because it's affordable. If you go and try to stay in Vail, you're paying several $100s. If you look at the rates of what's being charged in Minturn, they're quite a bit lower, and we're able to introduce this town to many people. And so renting by the room, as I have done, has been fantastic. It's hundreds of people that have come through and got to be sales tax paying guests who've come in. And when you look at big groups, like we have one coming up called Risers for Rents,
Yes.
and that's a rather large group. So they come in, they specifically choose Minturn, and they're going and trying to get all of the short-term rentals that they can because we don't have much for lodging. So I think it's important to have balance, and I live my life in that way. I have rental property here in Minturn where I keep my rents low for long-term tenants who are other business owners and who live and work in this town. I keep the rents rate low because I care about that. But I'm also a businessman and I feel like I need to take advantage of opportunities where I have a bedroom to help subsidize my living situation. So to me, I think I can understand how short-term rental can get a bad rap, but there's been a lot of positive that's come out of short-term rental from my experience in this community. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Kelly Toon, 531 Main Street. I property manage for Tom Sullivan and take care of a lot of his short-term and long-term rentals. And he does have a balance of them. And when I'm going through after someone leaves, I take out the trash, separate recycling, and there's always takeout from one of our restaurants, always. And if I meet the people, they're always asking where to go to eat. I really think it's important to have a cap, but it also because of lack of the hotel situation, and hopefully we will have a hotel soon, but only 14 rooms, well, 12. So it's still not a lot for being, we're, after COVID, we're a touristy town, I deemed myself. But I just think, yeah, it's a great opportunity for the businesses that a lot of the locals just don't have the money to go out every night. But if you do have a property that has new people in it every single night, they're gonna try every single restaurant they can in town. And they're curious, and if I meet them, they're always asking, where should I go? And I'll never tell them, go to Vail for this and that. I always point them to our local businesses. And also there's jobs created, for me, for the house cleaner, for the people doing the flowers and snow shoveling. And so it does create a whole economic thing. But when it does get too much, obviously you lose your neighbors, and I don't think we've gotten there yet. And I do think that any cap shouldn't be just someone renting out one room, because that's encouraging more people, which is what we're always trying to do, is encourage more people here. So if you do have a spare bedroom, like, why would we be trying to cap that and not try to rent that? And also, if you're building a new house, just, it's expensive. So what is the rent for long-term renter gonna be on a brand new $1.5 to $2.5 million house? I saw an ad online for renting a house that got built on Taylor Avenue last year. And I thought it was a joke. It was $10,000 a month to rent the brand new house that just got built. And I don't know what's happening with it, but I just know if you're asking $10,000, you're probably gonna get like 10 roommates in there, which the neighbors are probably gonna not want with parking regulations. And you have girlfriends on top of, and boyfriends staying, and it's just, that's also gonna piss off the neighbors. So where you can make your money back by having a family stay there, more multiple families if you're short-terming it. So I've kind of turned around a little bit on my initial thought 20 years ago about it, and I've seen the positives of it as long as it's limited. So, and I think we've had a good balance with the lack of hotels here. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. All right. I think that is good. We will continue discussion, hopefully schedule a work session on that topic. Moving on to item C, short-term rental tax measure. Jay, this has your name on it.
Yeah, you, Cindy, I was hoping you would turn the camera. Some of the things I'm going to say will also apply to the downtown discussion that we had as far as the election goes. This topic, I did a memo in the packet, so I'm going to try to be brief. What I'm looking for is direction. Should we put this increase of the lodging tax on the residential short-term rentals only? This would not affect the inns and hotels that we've got. This needs to go to a ballot measure because it is a Tabor issue, so it takes a public vote. It also requires to be on either the November countywide election or the town election in April, our normal election in April. We won't have another one for, a year and a half. We did not even consider it for this election in April because a lot of times it gets messy if council members are running against tax issues. So that was the logic there. Essentially what we're looking at doing, if you'll look at the memo and if, as I like to say, if you'll turn in your hymnals to page 713, I have a memo on there that shows, and I can bring it up on my screen if we would need to. But it says, hold on, I'm trying to get to that one real quick here. share screen. Okay, so you can see the memo on here, and what I'm looking at is this section right here. Currently, we have for a lodging tax, and this does apply to the inns, hotels, and short-term rentals. A short-term rental is defined as anything under 30 days or 30 nights, however you want to calculate it. For the taxes that are charged, there's a 2.9% for the state, 1.5% for the county, and half of that, the 0.5 goes to the Equal Transit. There's the transit authority that is a 0.5%. There's the town tax of 4%, and then there's a lodging tax on top of that of 1.5%, for a total of 10.4%. The projected increase in this would only, and I'm going to stress this over and over and over again, this would only be for the residential short-term rentals. We would have the same 2.9, 1.5, 0.5, and 4% tax, but instead of 1.5%, it would be 6.5%. This next table down below, I just went back a couple of years. I tried to not go, this has never been a really strong revenue source for us. When you look at it, it's $18,000 to $20,000 on a very good year. If I go back pre-COVID, which was 2020, it wasn't as high as this. So we have grown in this. But the difference in, for example, in 2023, that we just passed, instead of about $14,500 in income, we would have about $53,000. In that, I did include the inns and hotel rooms at 1.5, and then I extrapolated to 6.5 for the short-term rentals. In a nutshell, that's what we're looking to do. I think the better way to do it is, do we have any questions? There has been a lot of community input on this. It was in the recent community survey that we did, and it received very strong support. They have also, I'm just trying to see if I'm missing anything. I don't think I am. One of the things that we've discussed, both at staff and I believe at council as well, is earmarking some of the money to direct it towards, and this is just a off-the-cuff list. It's not limited at all. But we would be looking at possibly events, parks, community enhancements, childcare, and the number one would probably be housing options. If we did earmark this 5%, what I would probably recommend is that we just take along with it the 1.5. That wouldn't necessarily need to be a ballot question, but we would then be putting that whole amount right here. That would be all going towards whatever or several items that we wanted to apply it to. Because the ballot question the original ballot question in 2005 did not limit it. It just said it would go for community income and in the general fund. And then this one, we're actually saying maybe we would want to earmark it. I know that Earl was on the board, I believe, at that time when it was passed. It's been a really nice little thing that we've done. Up until about 2012, we were bringing in maybe $5,000 to $8,000 total every year. It's gone up because we have gotten a little more observant of who's renting. We've gotten a couple more. When Cindy explained the STR changes in her discussion, before she was reviewing those that weren't applying, and running it at night, that kind of thing. I was doing it. I would literally couldn't sleep, so I'd get up at midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I would just troll through the Airbnb sites and try to find the houses. And oftentimes you stand out on the street because you see through a window somebody's house that you recognize. You stand out in front and you just sort of, oh, that's the address, but that's how you find them. It's never been a contentious issue, so I don't want to bring that up at all. However, let's go ahead and go to questions if anybody's got some. I'm going to take this chair down so I can keep taking notes though.
Thank you, Jay. Earl, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to say I support the 5% increase on lodging tax. I don't think it's going to have any impact on what we do. It's not going to keep people away from renting our unit. So I don't see a problem with it at all. And I'm sure most of the other big folks will agree.
Council.
People have spoken.
How do we end up at 5 and not like 10?
Why not 20?
I think we were trying to be somewhat in line with some other municipalities. There are several that are in between like 2 and 5. I think there are some that are around 6. There aren't many that are that high, but certainly, I guess that would be a question for council if you want to evaluate the amount.
It doesn't include people renting a bedroom out.
So it would include all short-term rentals. So if it's pretty, we don't have many people just renting out a bedroom short-term rental, but I suppose there might be a couple. I think those are true lock-offs though. But right, if you have a short-term rental, this would apply to you. So regardless of what the logistics are of your short-term rental.
If you have a residential short-term rental, I still consider a hotel. I consider a hotel a short-term rental.
Right, hotel. This would not apply to hotels or commercial lodging. Correct.
I think it was a good start.
Council, do we want to raise it above 5 or start with that?
Shut up, Brian. There's a certain limit where it does impact, but I think the 6.5% total is certainly in line with what other communities are doing.
Yeah, let's not be New York.
Yeah, sounds good. My worry is like there's limited kind of like brain power and everything associated with ballots and ballot measures, and people like don't really love seeing anything to do with taxes, and I know they're not the ones paying it for the most part, but are we gonna kind of save our limited ballot measure, I'd say capacity in general, for something that's gonna make us 30 grand?
Well, judging by the community survey, I don't think this is one they're gonna push back on.
Yeah, I don't think that.
It's a 4 to 1.
You understand what I'm saying? Just in terms of ballot, like who knows how stacked the ballot's going to be this year? Are we worried at all about like what else is on there? What else? Whether taxes are being asked for? Are there any like
a lodging tax is not necessarily something that causes people to choke on their bile.
You think so, but I've seen some pretty weird ones happen in Eagle County over the years where people turn down certain things that are, like they turned down the open space extension, 8-10 years ago. And it was, I think a lot of people thought it was due to the fact that there was like a bunch of other stuff down ballot that had the word tax in it.
Yeah, but this is only voted on by residents of Minturn, period.
And it's not a property tax.
As long as you think people will understand it.
Well, as Larry said, they also come here because it's affordable, and then we're just gonna burn it down and tax them.
Yeah.
Let's start with 5. Come on.
It seems like a lot of work to do to raise $30,000, but
5 is more than 1.5 and less than 10. Let's go with 5. It's a nice, neat, round number.
Yeah.
Is this going to be difficult to enforce?
Well, that just goes back to the question about short-term rentals in general in regards to accountability.
Jay, do you want to take that question?
I did not.
Lynn asked if you thought this would be difficult to enforce. Do you feel like it's difficult now with collecting the lodging tax?
Lynn, that's an excellent question. No, it is not hard to enforce. I often send out letters to people, to a number of the short-term rentals saying, I haven't seen any tax for a while, and they'll call back and go, oh my gosh, no, I've been doing long-term. I still have my short-term permit, but I'm not using it at this point, or something like that. Lynn, it's an excellent question, because I don't want this to be an adversary position that we take. I really don't have a lot of pushback on it. I don't have a lot of trouble finding it. I will also point out, I just did a quick number on it. If I take 18,000, which is about, one of the numbers that I was looking at, and divide it by 1.5%, that's $1.2 million in revenue between all of the short-term rentals. So there's a lot. I mean, the Larry Stone and those guys, they spoke that this is something that brings in money to the town. And I, Brian, I definitely empathize and understand your thought of, is this a ballot measure that we're potentially, a tax measure that we're wasting kind of thing? If we're going to ask for a question, should it be so small? Sometimes the smaller ones are easier to pass and they will grow. We went for years and years with $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000, and now we're up to, 20s. It's not massive, but it is a growth. I also want to be very clear that what we're asking for tonight is direction for staff, i.e. Mike Sawyer, to assist in writing the ballot measure, and then we would bring it back. So you're still going to get a second bite at this apple.
It seems like a good idea, and I'm thinking maybe it makes us more consistent with other communities.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm in favor of it. I think we should do it. Yeah.
Thumbs down, but that's fine.
We have majority rules, direction to pursue tax. All right, and we'll have more discussion on it.
Now, the most important subject.
Yeah, this is the real highlight tonight. Item D, Geronimo.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay.
What a lovely
Okay. Staff is asking for council direction regarding Geronimo, whom we are all familiar with, Frank Sanders' car for summer parking. So just a little background, I'm sure you were all quite familiar, but we had previously, the council had in 2023 established Geronimo as the people's car and deemed it public art, which then exempted it from being towed, and it was permitted to be parked for longer than 72 hours. So staff acknowledges the history of this vehicle within the community, so we are seeking direction on addressing this. Essentially, the previous exemption had expired and had not been revisited yet. So it's currently expired. If council would like to reissue this exemption, it would be for the duration of the summer season, and it would need to expire November 1st for winter snow removal operations, of course. But so we just need direction from council.
I think it's part of Minturn's character, and I think we should grant it.
Absolutely, I agree with Lynn.
Didn't we let them park like down by the community bathrooms last year in that parking area, so it wasn't on Main Street the whole time?
We did that, I'm actually trying to remember, it was there for a bit, yes. And we would certainly allow that again, I think. I'm trying to remember if that was winter or summer that we actually.
I think it was summer.
They like broke and then they.
Oh, right, it broke
Yeah.
down
They
and
pushed
then
over
they
there.
had to.
Yeah.
But so currently it's parked on Main Street, obviously has been.
Just
for a
need some new stuffed animals and holes.
Yeah.
Stuffed animals.
Jasper like loves walking.
The rule is you can't remove an animal, but you can add.
Add 'em.
I'm in favor.
Yeah, I don't care either way, I'm fine.
Thumbs up all around.
Can we get like a fake cop car like Tony X says too and park it like somewhere over there to keep people slow down?
Only if it's Barney Fife.
Yeah.
We gotta wrap the whole
Direction to reapprove.
Okay, thank you.
High Five Media Board representation. We did not resolve this at the last meeting, so we do need somebody to volunteer, or else I will assign somebody.
I'm out of town for the next 2 months. I'm gonna go all the way to East Africa to avoid this.
I'm happy to like review stuff and do it, but I can't make the meetings. So I don't know what, if that's okay.
Yeah. I think that would be not ideal because it's a board position for High Five. sure they would appreciate attendance on that, but.
Yeah.
Nobody's raising their hand. Should we draw straws? Yeah. That's new ground for me.
Can we rotate through now or?
Assign it to staff. Doesn't have to be a council member.
Can you push it down to planning zone or the historic preservation?
Yeah, can we do that?
Yes, yes.
Is there anything else to ask?
I just simply won't physically be here, otherwise I bite the bullet, but I won't be.
I would say maybe we can put out an email to planning and zoning and historical preservation, see if anybody would like to volunteer, and if not, do staff as a backup. Since everybody's plates are full.
I think the rotating idea isn't bad.
Do that too. How's it? Yeah, what, how does everybody feel, rotating or assigned to?
Let's start with the first thing you said already.
Rotating?
I wouldn't, send out the two committees, I would remove the staff suggestion, they got enough on their plate.
Deal. Let's yeah, send that out to the other committees so someone can volunteer. Perfect. Moving on.
Way to kick that can.
Yeah. All right, and we do need, going on to future agenda items, we need to get a confirmation from council if we do want to cancel the July 3rd council meeting, because we didn't get a clear yes or no on that last time. I personally am in favor of canceling it, but we also have a lot to cover, so it's up to you guys.
I would support it the day that it's on, you know, with Avon fireworks and stuff. A lot of people like to go there. So support of canceling it.
I don't wanna zoom in at that hour either, so, good.
That's majority. We're gonna officially cancel the July.
Let's have a motion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I make a motion to cancel the July 3rd, 2024 Minturn Town Council meeting.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion by Tom, second by Gusty. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right. Any other future agenda items that we need to add?
My only question was this work session on the 17th, that would seem appropriate, that should be town council, but that's not how that got proffered up, unless you want to do a work session separate with all players, HBC, PNZ, town council.
I think HBC is part of that.
No, I understand. I'm saying, for example, when we did a combined meeting between P&Z and council, for example, when we were looking at code and design review down in the 100 block.
I think that's what Michelle told me is that's what she was going to do is
Okay,
have
so-
the whole HPC with the council together to come up. And the
Good.
HPC, I think, is going to make some suggestions.
Okay, because last we left, it was kind of onesie twosies. I'd rather it be the actual stakeholders, i.e. HPC, council, than not other outliers.
I believe that, well, yes.
Is that I'm
In
back
the
again?
newsletter, it says the 17th is open to the public in a work session.
I think it has to be open to the public, but I think
They're
that
open to the
the dominant presentation will probably be the HPC.
Well, if we can just get clarification on that from Michelle, that'd be great.
We can get clarification, but yes, to answer your question, work sessions are open to the public.
Okay.
Good.
Perfect. On that note,
But work sessions, usually work sessions are open to the public, but they are to be spectators at that. They're not going to be participating in it's usually just counsel and consultants or whatever, or lawyers or whatever are active on the work session. And people can come in and sit and listen and watch, but they're not participants.
Agreed.
all right. In that case, we can take a motion for.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Gussie, second by.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
I didn't think there was much to discuss.
What's that?
I didn't think there was much to discuss.